Sup, my fellas. Don't forget to leave feedback, and enjoy the story. Martial arts master Cheonjija kidnapped and drove 100 children into the hellish cave on Mount Hingshan. Our hero, Dan Hyunwoo, was one of those destined to fight for his life there. For years he mastered breathing techniques, learned to wield a sword, and control the energy of his body. One day the master led the group into a forbidden section of the cave, and from there hordes of monsters flooded out. At that moment Dan realized, this was not even training, the master had just herded them into a real hell. A brutal fight for survival began, where you had to kill at any cost, just to not die yourself. Out of 100 children, only he survived, Dan Hyunwoo. Then he understood. His life was now worth 99 lost ones. Looking at the lifeless body of his best friend, whom he couldn't save, he swore to take revenge on the master for this senseless massacre. 10 years later he split the cursed mountain and broke out to the surface. Then he froze, staring at the sky he hadn't seen in so long. So he decided to head toward the city. He entered the Cloud Pavilion, a crowded and filled with travelers and martial artists. Inside, ordinary life continued in noisy comfort, utterly unlike the cave he had escaped. Hyunwoo stepped in quietly, still carrying the sword that had kept him alive. A young noblewoman, Jo Seol-yeon Hunan, noticed him at once. Something about him immediately caught her attention. Others noticed too, especially that he was carrying a bare sword without a proper scabbard. The weapon itself looked unusual enough to draw even more eyes. Jo and Hunan, the patriarch's son, judged the sword exceptional the moment he saw it. Meanwhile, Hyunwoo was simply served a bowl of noodles. Faced with proper food for the first time in ages, he paused as if the sight alone overwhelmed him. He took his first bite with the caution of someone relearning ordinary life. The taste hit him so deeply that the harshness clinging to him seemed to melt away. Around him, other customers casually ordered more food, unaware of how extraordinary this moment was for him. Seol-yeon could not understand why she kept watching him. The stranger held her attention more strongly the longer she looked. When he quietly admitted the meal was delicious, the server assumed the matter was settled. The server then waited for payment, and was met with blank confusion. He explained the price, only to realize the stranger did not even grasp the idea of paying. Hyunwoo finally understood the missing concept, money. He accepted the explanation with complete seriousness, as if learning a new rule of the world. He concluded with childlike clarity that the problem was simply money. The server nervously insisted that eating required payment. Hyunwoo answered honestly that he had none. Seeing no coin on him, the server tried to seize the sword at his waist instead. Hyunwoo refused immediately. To him, that sword was not property but the price of his last friend's life. The server exploded in outrage, convinced the stranger had planned to eat without paying from the start. The commotion drew armed men and onlookers toward Hyunwoo's table. Jo-in panicked when he saw Seol-yeon step into the dispute. Ignoring the tension, she told the server not to be too harsh. She offered to pay for Hyunwoo's meal herself. The server immediately backed down before her status. Hyunwoo faced Seol-yeon directly, unsure how to respond to such kindness. He understood that she was helping him, but the proper words would not come. Seol-yeon, seeing him up close, became convinced his eyes were not those of a schemer but of someone seeing the world anew. Hyunwoo tried to speak, yet still failed to find the right words. In the end, he simply turned and left, leaving Seol-yeon and the others confused. Seol-yeon felt that he had wanted to say something important before going. The people around her were baffled that he would leave without even offering thanks. She watched him go instead of taking offense. The server complained that the stranger had shown no gratitude at all. Jo-in dismissed Hyunwoo as an ungrateful vagabond, though he admitted the man likely truly had no money. He also judged that the stranger seemed to have no inner energy. Seol-yeon disagreed inwardly, because the sword he carried was clearly extraordinary. That realization sharpened her concern. She knew an artisan sword carried openly without a scabbard would only invite trouble. So she decided she should follow him and help, at least by giving him a scabbard. Outside, Hyunwoo finally understood what he should have done in return for her kindness. Too late, he realized he should have thanked her. Back in the Cloud Pavilion, the conversation shifted to the larger turmoil gathering around Hingshan. The inn was filling with blue-robed warriors from the Murim Alliance. Their presence showed just how much influence the alliance wielded. Seol-yeon noted that the entire place was packed with alliance warriors. Jo-in remarked that even the alliance leader was moving personally because of the situation. Sima Cheol explained that both the Unorthodox Alliance and the Green Forest Bandits were also heading for Hingshan, making such a response inevitable. He added that the huge following behind the alliance leader came not only from necessity but from Cheonjija's overwhelming reputation. Cheonjija was remembered as the greatest and strongest martial artist in Murim history. Legend said he possessed unmatched insight, countless trap techniques, immense martial power, and the eerie ability to read the flow of heavenly energy. In his later years, his legend only grew darker and greater. He created the Shadow Flash Blade, a martial art that shook the world. By combining that art with trap techniques, he raised a nameless vagabond into a supreme martial master in only 3 years. That disciple was later branded a public enemy and died miserably, but the scandal only drew more attention to Cheonjija. Afterward, many groups searched for Cheonjija, yet he vanished without a trace. Then the Jo clan head found the treasure map to Cheonjija's martial arts, making the whole Murim world covet Hingshan. Sima Cheol assured Seol-yeon that because he was accompanying her by the Jo clan head's order, Nothing major should happen, though she still had to be careful. Seal Yin quietly held to the feeling that some encounters could not be predicted or ignored. Zhou En openly opposed her idea of following the vagabond. He insisted the stranger had nothing to do with her, and that her kindness would be wasted on someone so rude. Seal Yin still hesitated, unwilling to let the matter go. Sima Qiu supported Zhou En, warning that leaving the group now was too dangerous, especially with the alliance leader soon arriving. Pressed from both sides, Seal Yin reluctantly agreed to stay. Unaware of that discussion, Hyunwoo continued alone through the city streets. Nearby, ordinary people haggled over small prices, reminding him how unfamiliar everyday life had become. Street music and laughter drifted through the market around him. To Hyunwoo, the peacefulness of it all felt almost unreal. He watched a mother and child at a stall, struck by the simple warmth of their lives. The child thanked his mother brightly for a small gift. That ordinary exchange stirred something painful in Hyunwoo. He remembered promising his friend Hyunwoo that once they escaped, they would finally live the lives they had been denied. His dying companion had asked one last favor. A.K. Seji begged that if they got out, Hyunwoo should visit his home and tell his father about him. Hyunwoo had refused to accept that as a farewell and told him to survive and speak to his father himself. Seji laughed and pretended to believe that future was still possible. But beneath the smile, he asked Hyunwoo not to die. Together they had sworn to survive that day as well. Then, in the middle of battle, death came for Hyunwoo from behind. Seji saw the attack first and shouted a warning. Hyunwoo turned too late, realizing what was happening. Seji threw himself in front of the strike and took the fatal blow meant for Hyunwoo. Hyunwoo collapsed beside him, shattered that his friend had chosen to die in his place. He begged Seji to rise, clinging to the promise they had made together. With his last strength, Seji told Hyunwoo to live on, because among them all he had been the strongest, and to tell his father what happened. As that memory closed in, Hyunwoo was left carrying not only his friend's deaths, but Seji's final apology to the father he would never see again. Under the moon, he reflects that his freedom was purchased with 99 lives. He carries the weight of surviving them and knows he owes the dead a debt. He swears that debt will be collected from Cheonjija. With that resolve, he starts moving again. Though he wanders without purpose, his steps lead him back to the place he left behind. At the doorway, he realizes something unexpected. The young woman who once helped him is still there, and he regrets never thanking her. As he watches, he quietly studies the situation instead of revealing himself. A large Murim Alliance force suddenly mobilizes through the city. Their commander orders them to push through the night and reach Hingshan within a day. The troops obey at once and rush out. He remains hidden and keeps observing their destination. Among those leaving, he notices the girl is traveling with them. That confirms she is tied to whatever mission is drawing the alliance to Hingshan. He decides to follow and find out where they are headed. By night, the pursuit carries everyone far from the city. The alliance halts at the entrance to Hingshan to rest before advancing. Hearing that, he realizes they may be returning to the place he escaped from. When he senses another force also moving toward the same place, he wonders what everyone is searching for. Elsewhere in the forest, Murim Alliance leaders discuss how both the Unorthodox Alliance and the Green Forest Bandits have abruptly changed course, which makes the situation feel dangerous. Their advisor, Jae-gal Junction, tries to calm the Alliance leader and downplay the threat. But Dako Woon, the Murim Alliance leader, cannot shake the feeling that something is wrong. Meanwhile, the girl shows the strain of the forced march. Peng Qiliang offers to ask for a rest on her behalf, trying to look considerate. Another man cuts him off and claims he will take care of her himself, making it clear he wants Peng Qiliang away from her. Before that tension can grow, a hostile force emerges from the trees and announces it has found the Murim Alliance. The attackers reveal themselves as enemies who have been hunting the Alliance down. Their leader, the blood-eating demon of the Green Forest Bandits, mocks the Alliance for hiding so well. Dako Woon immediately orders his men to prepare for battle. Jae-gal Junction warns that the Unorthodox Alliance has joined the ambush as well, turning the Alliance into the smaller side. He also recognizes the blood-eating demon as a martial master dangerous enough to threaten even their leadership. The blood-eating demon launches the massacre first, eager to make the Orthodox faction bleed. He tears through the front line with overwhelming force. Alliance warriors try to surround him, but they are too slow to stop him. He cuts and kicks through them in a frenzy, dropping men one after another. The Murim Alliance begins taking brutal losses almost immediately. The slaughter spreads through the formation as more men are struck down. Even the bystanders can only brace themselves as the killing closes in. After crushing the weaker fighters, the blood-eating demon turns his attention to stronger prey. Dako Woon steps in and finally meets the assault head-on. The bandit chief singles him out by name, eager for a direct clash. The two masters collide while the battlefield breaks apart around them. Dako Woon manages to block the heavy strike, but only barely. Around them, the alliance continues to be cut down by the surrounding enemies. Dako Woon realizes they are being overwhelmed by numbers as well as strength. The blood-eating demon taunts him and declares that Cheonjija's secret weapon belongs to their side. Hearing Cheonjija's name, the hidden observer is jolted. He finally moves, driving his sword into the ground as if to anchor his power. The impact shatters stone and sends force surging outward. He rises into the air above the battlefield, drawing everyone's attention. Then he descends in a blinding strike. The blood-eating demon is smashed aside before he can finish his attack. The shockwave hurls enemies away in every direction. His sword force tears through the battlefield and instantly breaks the encirclement. When he lands, both allies and enemies are left staring at him in stunned silence. Woon can only watch in disbelief at the sudden intervention. The girl is equally stunned by the stranger's power. The surviving Alliance warriors realize they have just been saved. Ignoring the battlefield shock, the newcomer demands to know where Cheonjija is. Woon is unnerved that such a man appeared without even his senses detecting him. Still, he thanks the stranger for the rescue and asks why he is searching for Cheonjija here. He answers with a revelation that shatters his own purpose. Cheonjija died 10 years ago. For the first time, he is forced to consider that the man he swore to kill may already be gone. Yet even with that claim, he cannot accept that the debt for his friends' deaths can simply vanish. He struggles to believe his revenge target is truly dead. As his emotions stir, a strange energy begins leaking from him. Nearby Alliance warriors suddenly feel their strength, and were being crushed by an inexplicable despair. The narration reveals that even Dan Hyunwoo himself does not notice the energy of void spilling from his body. That void instantly drags the surrounding Murim Alliance members into helpless grief and near paralysis. Inside, Hyunwoo is left with a bitter emptiness after surviving hell only to lose the object of his revenge. The dead seem to call out to him, begging him to learn what happened to them, and to his family. Their lingering resentment urges him to avenge all those who died unjustly. Woon recognizes the phenomenon as the energy of void. He realizes that if it continues, his own men could suffer energy deviation, so Hyunwoo must be stopped quickly. Before he can act, the girl gently checks on Hyunwoo instead of fearing him. That simple kindness reminds Hyunwoo why he followed her here in the first place. He remembers the dying friend who gave him a sword and told him to live, and he understands that kindness is what kept him alive. With Cheonjija gone, he begins searching for a new direction for his life. He wonders whether he now has to seek out the people tied to his past instead. As his thoughts settle, the oppressive helplessness around him suddenly disappears. Woon is astonished that the energy of void stopped on its own, something even seasoned masters rarely escape once it begins. Hyunwoo turns toward the girl. He approaches her directly, calm again. She asks if he is searching for someone, trying to understand him rather than judge him. She reminds her uncle that this stranger just saved them. Then she asks if they can travel together until he finds the person he seeks. Her uncle hesitates, weighing her request. Woon thinks it is hard to refuse someone who saved them, but he also worries about exposing his people to void again. He continues to deliberate instead of rejecting the idea outright. At the same time, others in the alliance privately judge Hyunwoo as extremely dangerous because he destroyed their enemies in an instant. Woon decides it is safer to keep such a man close where he can be watched. He finally agrees to the girl's proposal. The decision brings Hyunwoo into direct association with the alliance group. Woon goes further and invites him to work for the escort agency. The offer surprises the surrounding alliance members, who know how prestigious the Hunan escort agency is. Hyunwoo hesitates, not understanding what is being offered. One of the men reacts as if refusing such a place would be absurd. Hyunwoo calmly admits he cannot answer because he does not even know what an escort agency is. That blunt ignorance leaves the others speechless, and they rush to explain. As the girl explains that an escort agency transports goods and protects clients, Hyunwoo finally grasps the idea, though Woon still questions whether recruiting him is wise. Not everyone is pleased, and some alliance men dismiss him as a rustic nobody who appeared from nowhere. But those same men are fixated on the sword at his waist and the pressure it gives off. They realize the weapon itself is extraordinary because its killing intent is unmistakable. Greed quickly replaces contempt as they decide such a sword should belong to someone they consider more worthy. Meanwhile, the alliance chooses to postpone that issue and focus on Hengshan, waiting until the alliance leader and core leaders enter the mountain. By dawn, the search reaches Hengshan itself. The towering mountain becomes the center of everyone's competing ambitions. Woon arrives feeling an ominous unease about the place. Hyunwoo studies the mountain in silence. He suspects this is the place everyone has been chasing. Woon admits they are searching for Cheonjija's secret manual, but they still cannot find the cave entrance. His men search the cliffs and report failure. Pressed for time, Woon considers cutting through the mountain, even if it risks damaging the manual. Hyunwoo reacts as if he already knows a better way. He explains that the route he escaped through has collapsed, so they must find the entrance Cheonjija used, the one where Cheonjija's lingering energy can still be sensed. He identifies the hidden location at once. Without waiting for permission, he dashes toward it. The others scramble after him, shocked that he seems certain. He reaches the rock face and forces his way to the concealed opening. He announces that the entrance is there. Woon is stunned and immediately demands to know how Hyunwoo could know that. Hyunwoo answers that this mountain was once his home. The girl is startled to learn he truly belonged to this place. Others mock him as a mountain savage, using his past to belittle him even while it explains his rough appearance. Woon takes control of the operation, ordering only himself, the advisor, and the rising dragon corps leader to search inside while everyone else secures the perimeter. The alliance obeys and forms a guard around the entrance. Jaegal Junction thanks Hyunwoo again, acknowledging how much they owe him. Hyunwoo warns them that the cave holds nothing they expect. To him, the place contains no treasure, only the lingering memories of death. The thought drags him back toward the trauma buried inside the mountain. The darkness of those memories seems ready to swallow him again. Sensing his unease, Dako Woon tells him to stay out of what comes next. The alliance leaders head into the cave while Hyunwoo remains outside. He tells himself Cheonjija is dead, and whatever happens inside is no longer his concern. But the girl quietly steps toward him instead of leaving him behind. She asks if he really lived here, still trying to understand him as a person. Her question draws a faint, genuine smile from him. At that moment, two men move in around her with sudden intent. Hyunwoo instantly notices the threat. The girl confronts them when they try to drag her away, and they justify it by claiming Hyunwoo might be a Green Forest spy. She defends him, insisting they all saw him save them, but they twist that rescue into a possible act. Their real motive emerges as they decide that if he proves innocent later, they can simply keep his sword in the meantime. Up close, their greed sharpens as they study the weapon. They become convinced the sword is far more valuable than it first appears because of the killing intent pouring from it. Hyunwoo sees through them and asks plainly whether they are demanding he hand the sword over. One of them drops the pretense and orders him to surrender it. The girl can only watch anxiously as the confrontation hardens. Hyunwoo refuses without hesitation, declaring that the sword was entrusted to him by a dead friend and that he will never give it to anyone while he lives. His answer leaves the girl worried and the greedy men momentarily silent. The standoff tightens as they shift their footing, ready for what comes next. Then Hyunwoo narrows his focus and calmly reads the battlefield. He shuts out distraction and commits to acting at the exact right moment. He realizes the two pursuers are coordinating, with one circling behind while the other presses him from the front. Once he confirms they intend a joint attack, he immediately forms a counter. Instead of meeting them head-on, he drops low to let their timing work against them. He slips beneath their assault and cuts through both attackers in one motion. Even after striking, his expression barely changes. The surviving enemy is left shaken by how effortlessly Hyunwoo got behind him. The attempted pincer collapses before it can even land. In an instant, the two-men pressure turns into a failed gamble. One attacker tries to save himself by demanding Hyunwoo surrender the sword and avoid injury. Hyunwoo answers by reaching for the weapon without hesitation. His killing intent flares hard enough to freeze the situation. A senior from the Alliance urgently orders his men to stop interfering and keep watching instead. The blue-clad fighter immediately recognizes the Alliance leader's authority and backs off. Elsewhere, the Alliance leadership advances in grim silence, already weighed down by what this mission may mean. They anxiously ask whether the expedition found what they were sent for. The answer spreading among them is that Cheonjija's secret weapon has been discovered. Fearing the implications, the Alliance leader abruptly orders a full withdrawal. His subordinates obey at once, abandoning the search before matters spiral further. One of the defeated men can only resent that Hyunwoo escaped because of the sudden retreat. With the danger gone, the young woman rushes to Hyunwoo and asks if he is unharmed. Hyunwoo is puzzled by the question itself, as if the idea of being okay means little to him. She takes his silence as reassurance and admits how worried she had been. Trying to bridge the distance between them, she introduces herself as Jo Seol-yin. Hyunwoo finally gives his own name. Seol-yin repeats it with quiet delight and immediately decides she likes it. Hyunwoo cuts the moment short and tells her they should prepare to head back. For now, the Murim Alliance's expedition to uncover Cheonjija's secret weapon comes to an end. The story shifts to Hubei province, where the aftermath begins to spread. In the streets, people excitedly claim the Murim Alliance has obtained Cheonjija's secret weapon and may soon dominate the world. Others admit they have no idea what the weapon actually is, only that the Alliance hid it away. As the rumors multiply, the Murim Alliance's reputation becomes the center of endless speculation. Inside headquarters, the Alliance leader slams down his frustration at how badly things have gotten out of hand. He knows that even if they deny the existence of any secret weapon, no one will believe them now. At an Elder Council meeting, the scale of the rumor is laid bare as they report it has already spread across Hubei and beyond. The Alliance leader begins explaining what they truly found in the cave at Hingshan. It was not an army or a weapon cache, only a wooden box left behind with a letter attributed to Cheonjija. He recalls the moment they recovered that box from the cave. The box had been placed atop a written message, as if meant to be found and interpreted together. Even the elders admit the writing in the letter is baffling. One phrase in particular stands out and unsettles them: blood demon being. The letter warns that this blood demon being will shake the era and plunge the Jianghu into chaos. It claims Cheonjija raised 100 unmatched martial masters to stop that future threat. It further says those masters could only be controlled through a yin-yang parasite sealed inside the wooden box. The letter ends like a final act of defiance, insisting the blood demon being will never prevail. When the box is opened, the elders finally see the so-called yin-yang parasite inside. What emerges is not a legendary weapon but a strange living creature preserved within the box. That discovery only deepens their doubt, because the parasite is real but the 100 martial masters mentioned in the letter are nowhere to be found. One elder bluntly asks whether the entire letter is simply nonsense. The Alliance leader rejects that easy answer and suspects someone is deliberately manipulating events. An elder agrees there are reasons to think so, starting with what happened at Hingshan. The Green Forest Bandits' true objective seemed less like securing a secret weapon and more like harming the Murim Alliance itself. Their disappearance and the missing corpses suggest the scene had already been arranged before the Alliance arrived. The marketplace rumors are cited as further proof, because they have spread too smoothly and too fast to be natural. The alliance leader concludes that someone is deliberately forcing all of Jianghu to focus on the Murim alliance. That raises the terrifying question of who would dare orchestrate something on that scale. The first suspicion falls on the Zhou clan head, who originally brought them the map. But even those present hesitate, because Zhou Ilhaiyan does not seem like the sort of man who would engineer such a scheme himself. The alliance leader decides that even if the Zhou clan head is innocent, there may still be a spy within the Zhou clan, so they must place the clan under watch. He also warns that if the Zhou clan is being used, then the real enemy may be traitors hidden elsewhere. The parasite itself becomes a symbol of how little they truly understand about the traps set before them. The scene shifts to the Zhou clan estate, where the escort agency head has returned. He is welcomed back safely after the dangerous journey. Hyunwoo quietly realizes just how large Seal Yian's home and family influence really are. The escort agency head excuses himself to report to the clan head immediately. Before leaving, he decides Hyunwoo should first be taken to the Hunan escort agency. Hyunwoo notices the arrangement but says nothing. Seal Yian regrets that she never managed to get him a scabbard on the way back. Hyunwoo reflects that people outside the cave place strange importance on scabbards. Seal Yian explains that no ordinary scabbard could endure the killing intent of his sword anyway. To prove the point, the sword's mere presence shatters what covers it. Hyunwoo accepts that explanation and concludes he truly has no need for a scabbard. Seal Yian apologizes for bringing it up at all. That apology catches Hyunwoo off guard far more than the earlier battle did. He is reminded of a dying companion from the cave who had also apologized to him. The memory leaves him wondering why someone on the verge of death would feel the need to say sorry. That unresolved question sharpens into a private demand to understand what apology really means. Unable to bear hearing those words again, he firmly tells Seal Yian never to apologize to him. Though startled, she accepts his request without resentment. Their moment ends when the escort agency head calls Hyunwoo away. Hyunwoo leaves with him, while Seal Yian is left wondering if she somehow upset him. She can only watch him go and question what she did wrong. That night at the Hunan escort agency, Hyunwoo enters a new world of labor rather than warfare. Seeing workers hauling cargo, he learns what a porter is. A porter, he is told, is simply a laborer who carries baggage for the escort agency. The agency head immediately places Hyunwoo under the supervision of a senior porter named Zhongchil and orders him trained. Zhongchil sizes up the newcomer with open contempt. Still, he obediently accepts the assignment once the agency head makes it clear the matter is settled. The agency head worries Zhongchil may be rough, but hopes nothing serious will happen. Before leaving, he tells Hyunwoo to learn properly from his new superior. Hyunwoo gives no real answer, and the agency head can only awkwardly wish him luck. The moment they are alone, Zhongchil makes it clear he intends to treat the newcomer harshly. He steps in close, trying to establish dominance, and demands submission from the first moment. Hyunwoo answers with only his name, offering nothing else. Zhongchil takes that calm brevity as disrespect and grows angrier. He starts mocking Hyunwoo's build, trying to provoke fear and obedience. The whole dormitory turns to watch as the confrontation escalates. Zhongchil threatens to kill him on his very first day if he keeps resisting. Hyunwoo senses the hostility clearly and weighs whether ending it immediately would be simpler. For a brief instant, he seriously considers cutting Zhongchil down. Zhongchil suddenly notices the sword and realizes this newcomer is far more dangerous than he assumed. He tries to regain control by demanding the weapon be handed over, insisting porters have no right to carry swords. Hyunwoo refuses without the slightest room for negotiation. That answer, combined with the sword's killing intent, terrifies Zhongchil into recognizing he may have provoked a monster. He abruptly ends the confrontation for the night, pretending it is simply too late to continue. Hyunwoo notes to himself that an unusual number of people keep trying to take this sword from him. The other porters quietly mock Zhongchil for acting tough and then backing down in fear. Humiliated, Zhongchil lashes out at the onlookers and forces everyone to disperse. The dormitory settles down, and Hyunwoo is treated like just another worker for the night. Zhongchil leads him to the shared sleeping quarters, still trying to act like the one in control. Even while walking away, Zhongchil tells himself Hyunwoo would be worthless without the sword. He quietly vows to repay the humiliation once he finds a safer chance. Late at night, while the others sleep, Zhongchil rises to make good on that grudge. He creeps through the dormitory, searching for Hyunwoo's sleeping place. Zhongchil moves carefully, determined to strike while the newcomer is vulnerable. He assumes Hyunwoo must be asleep somewhere nearby and easy to ambush. Instead, he walks straight into something solid and realizes too late that Hyunwoo is standing right there. Confused and panicked, he cannot understand what he has just run into. When he looks up, Hyunwoo is already looming over him in silence. Zhongchil blurts out his shock that Hyunwoo was never asleep at all. Hyunwoo remains calm, as if this intrusion was expected. Zhongchil is horrified to realize Hyunwoo has been sleeping while standing. Desperate, he reaches for the sword, thinking seizing it will save him. The instant his hand moves, Hyunwoo's eyes snap open with lethal awareness. Zhongchil's body freezes before that killing intent, his instincts screaming at him to stop. In that instant, Hyunwoo's poised draw makes Zhongchil feel as if death itself is descending on him. The fear is so overwhelming that Zhongchil can no longer think like a fighter, only like prey. He becomes convinced he is standing before a predator that will kill him without effort. Even he can hardly believe it, but he truly sees his own death in front of him. In reality, nothing has happened yet, and his terror is born from misunderstanding Hyunwoo's readiness. He collapses and begs for mercy before a blow is even struck. Hyunwoo had only been circulating his inner energy to protect himself while resting. Sleeping upright was not natural to him at first, but it had become necessary. The long, brutal time he spent trapped in the cave taught him to remain alert even while eating, resting, or sleeping. Back then, danger could come at any moment, so he learned to survive without ever fully letting his guard down. That constant vigilance is what formed his habit of sleeping while standing and circulating inner energy. By morning, the night's terror has passed and ordinary work begins. Hyunwoo exhales lightly, already adjusting to this new life. Seeing Jongchil sprawled nearby, he casually checks whether the man is still there. Jongchil wakes in panic, still haunted by the memory of the night before. Hyunwoo barely remembers his name, while Jongchil flees the room screaming in humiliation and fear. The other porters drag themselves awake and immediately start talking about the heavy workload ahead. Outside, the escort agency yard is stacked with cargo waiting to be moved. Hyunwoo begins by testing the weight of the crates with ease. He moves through the stacks with the same agility he once used in battle. He lands on the cargo as if balancing on solid ground. Even the unstable piles respond to him as though they are no challenge at all. Within moments, he is standing atop a towering stack, having mastered the physical task almost immediately. Hyunwoo concludes that porter work is simple enough and starts treating this new role as just another skill to learn. The workers nervously admit the newcomer is handling the job correctly, but his ability already feels unsettling. Then Hyunwoo calmly asks whether he should finish the rest of the work as well, leaving the others speechless. Once they give him permission, he clears the remaining cargo with absurd ease and speed. As word spreads that the new porter may take everyone's work, Seal Yin overhears the gossip and turns her attention to him. When she appears, the workers greet Lady Seal Yin and realize she has come by around mealtime. Seal Yin recalls Hyunwoo's earlier warning that she must never apologize to him, because hearing regret from someone close affects him deeply. Unable to stop thinking about what he meant, she admits her own curiosity drove her to seek him out. Seeing him up close, she gathers herself and prepares to speak. She accidentally greets him by name, startling herself with how naturally it comes. Hyunwoo explains that he has started working as a porter, and Seal Yin anxiously checks whether he is being treated badly. Instead of asking what she intended, Seal Yin awkwardly blurts out a question about his likes and dislikes. Hyunwoo answers simply that he values peace and hates seeing that peace disturbed. He continues, making clear that his feelings go beyond mere quietness. What truly angers him is hearing a friend force out an apology. Seal Yin is overwhelmed to realize he already considers her a friend, and she vows never to apologize to him again. Their private moment is interrupted by someone arriving. A mounted visitor approaches and calls the meeting a coincidence. The newcomer, Peng Qiliang, immediately flatters Seal Yin and makes his interest obvious. Seal Yin keeps her composure and asks why a Murim warrior like him has come to the escort agency. Qiliang explains that the Murim Alliance has assigned him a mission to support the Hunan escort agency as much as possible. The narration warns that Hyunwoo's wish for peace stands against the world already moving toward conflict. Murim itself is said to be nearing a bloody upheaval. Elsewhere, a report arrives that 30 members of the Heavenly Vigil Corps have been annihilated. The survivor can only apologize for failing to identify the killer. The scale of the massacre shocks them, since the Heavenly Vigil Corps were strong enough to overwhelm elite Alliance forces. Then the memory reveals something inhuman emerging from behind the curtains. That monstrous figure slaughtered the Corps effortlessly, tossing trained fighters aside like toys. The massacre was not a battle but a one-sided butchery. The witness confirms that a single being destroyed them all, and someone identifies the creatures as monsters created by Cheonjija. A blood-soaked elder with demonic power looks forward to testing those creations against the blood demon being. The aftermath leaves only the wounded and the dead behind. In response, orders are given to investigate every Murim Alliance member currently in Hingshan. The commander swears he will uncover whoever wiped out his Heavenly Vigil Corps. Back in the present, the peaceful courtyard returns, but the tension remains under the surface. Seal Yin senses the atmosphere shift and grows uneasy. Qiliang resumes his smooth flattery, praising Seal Yin's beauty while presenting himself as the vice leader of the Rising Dragon Corps. Yet his attention keeps drifting away from her. He becomes fixated on the man standing beside her. Qiliang mocks the absurdity of a porter still carrying a sword and implies Hyunwoo is too weak to deserve it. Seal Yin worries that provoking a Murim Alliance representative could bring trouble down on the escort agency and urges Hyunwoo not to react. Qiliang is more disturbed by how close Seal Yin and Hyunwoo already seem to be. His younger sister Peng Miryang bluntly guesses that he rushed over because of his interest in Seal Yin. At that moment, an escort warrior arrives and directly asks if the newcomer is Dan Hyunwoo. Hyunwoo confirms his name without hesitation. Hyung Pyo introduces himself and explains that he has been ordered to train the new porter who will join the upcoming escort mission. Seal Yin is shocked that Hyunwoo is being sent out so soon after starting work. Qiliang dismisses her concern, saying escort missions are a porter's proper duty, while privately welcoming a chance to get closer to Seal Yin without Hyunwoo nearby. Hyunwoo, however, refuses to hand over his sword just because people call it an escort mission. Hyung Pyo decides to take charge anyway, though he bristles at Hyunwoo's tone. Qiliang keeps needling him, warning that defying his senior escort warrior could cost him his job. Miryang mocks the men for their childish posturing. Still, she notices Hyunwoo's complete lack of agitation and begins to suspect the sword at his side is not just decoration. When Hyungwoo starts to leave, Seal Yin calls after him in concern. Ki-leong assumes Hyungwoo is retreating because he was rattled and decides he may not be special after all. Seal Yin is confused when someone suddenly orders that Hyungwoo be followed. Hyungwoo himself accepts the order matter-of-factly, deciding to follow because he cannot afford to lose this job. Seal Yin can only watch him go, worried and unable to stop him. Hyung-pyo leads Hyungwoo away while Seal Yin remains behind, still focused on him. Elsewhere, the escort agency head assigns Jongchil to teach Hyungwoo porter work and warns that he must not cause trouble on the mission. Privately, the agency head also wants Hyungwoo pushed away from Seal Yin before they grow any closer. Hyung-pyo questions why he should have to babysit a grown man. The agency head can only tell him that he will understand once he meets Hyungwoo. After meeting him, Hyung-pyo decides he can excuse Hyungwoo's rough speech, but the sword still bothers him. The idea of a porter carrying a blade refuses to leave his mind. He finally asks whether Hyungwoo has been training in swordsmanship. Hyungwoo answers that he uses the tri-energy sword art. Hyung-pyo immediately assumes that means Hyungwoo is just a beginner dreaming of becoming an escort warrior, and he boasts that real combat demands more than basic fundamentals. To prove his point, Hyung-pyo draws his sword. Hyungwoo studies him without any sign of intimidation. Hyung-pyo challenges him to demonstrate his tri-energy sword art. Hyungwoo misreads the threat and asks if Hyung-pyo intends to kill him. Flustered, Hyung-pyo clarifies that he only means a spar to compare their skill. Hyungwoo repeats the idea back to him, measuring what that means. Then he bluntly declares that he is above Hyung-pyo. Hyung-pyo is stunned by the sheer audacity. He protests that they cannot be equals when he has trained his whole life and Hyungwoo has only recently taken up the sword. Even so, Hyung-pyo decides to teach the arrogant novice a lesson and steps forward to show him how to become stronger. Hyungwoo simply raises a hand and invites him closer. He calmly adjusts his stance, as if calculating how much force will be safe. Hyung-pyo realizes too late that Hyungwoo is treating the exchange with deadly seriousness. Hyungwoo admits this is his first time trying not to kill someone, so he has to be careful. He settles on a method that will spare Hyung-pyo's life. Satisfied, he announces that he now knows how to avoid killing him. Hyung-pyo finally understands why the escort agency head warned him. Still determined, he launches the first attack. He rushes in with full confidence, expecting to overwhelm the porter. Hyungwoo watches the attack with detached calm. He judges that this is the full extent of Hyung-pyo's offense. To avoid killing him, Hyungwoo decides to strike only what lies directly in front of him. He unleashes a single sword stroke charged with overwhelming force. The slash erupts like a bolt of lightning. A pillar of thunderous sword energy crashes down between them and tears through the courtyard. Hyung-pyo is caught in the blast before he can even comprehend it. The impact sends him flying helplessly through the air. He crashes to the ground in total defeat. Watching the result, he realizes in horror that what he just faced was far beyond ordinary tri-energy sword art. The shock leaves him momentarily blank. Flat on the ground, he can only stare upward in disbelief. Hyungwoo innocently asks whether it hurt badly. Hyung-pyo demands to know what martial art was really used. Hyungwoo insists it was still the tri-energy sword art, specifically a technique called Heavenly Thunder. Hyung-pyo cannot accept that explanation, because what he felt was nothing like the basic art he knows. As he reflects on the thunder-like force, he realizes Hyungwoo is a hidden master, and wonders whether the escort agency head already knew. Hyungwoo, oblivious to the deeper implications, repeats that he is simply more skilled. Instead of resenting him, Hyung-pyo finds the contradiction absurd and concludes that Hyungwoo is frighteningly strong yet innocent like a child. He decides he can report the truth later, but first he must teach Hyungwoo basic social rules so that his strength does not cause disasters. Hyung-pyo announces that the real lesson will not be martial arts at all. Hyungwoo accepts this with a small, trusting smile. Hyung-pyo begins with the simplest rule of all. When someone is down, you offer a hand and help them up. Hyungwoo immediately understands. He follows the instruction exactly and helps Hyung-pyo to his feet. From there, Hyungwoo ends up staying at Hyung-pyo's home and learning how ordinary people live. Even his sleeping habits reveal how unfamiliar he is with normal life, leaving Hyung-pyo baffled. Under Hyung-pyo's guidance, Hyungwoo slowly learns both worldly customs and skills he had long neglected. That education includes being stopped from changing clothes in public. Hyung-pyo is mortified by how little shame Hyungwoo has. Even so, the narration notes that by working under Hyung-pyo, Hyungwoo gradually begins opening his heart. The lessons continue in chaotic fashion, with Hyung-pyo desperately trying to stop Hyungwoo from stripping even further outdoors. Miryong watches this strange training from the sidelines with quiet interest. At the same time, the Murim Alliance secretly orders the Rising Dragon Corps to monitor the Zhou clan head's every move. Their true mission is to determine whether the Zhou clan head was connected to the Green Forest Bandits' attack at Hingshan, and to secure proof. Miryong accepts the covert assignment in the Alliance leader's name. Yet, while observing the escort agency, she sees no obvious suspect and can only note that the strangest figure there is the half-naked man. Her attention shifts upward when she notices Seal Yin watching from above. Miryong dryly concludes that Seal Yin has unexpectedly peculiar taste. Meanwhile, Seal Yin quietly repeats Hyungwoo's name to herself. Seeing him now dressed as one of the agency's own, she feels that he has truly become part of the Hunan escort agency. Time passes, and the day of departure arrives. The horses are prepared for the mission. The escort agency head entrusts escort leader Ma Yuk with the important mission and orders him to return safely. Ma Yuk swears in the agency's name that they will complete the escort and come back alive. With that vow, the escort mission officially begins. The wagons roll out of the compound. The porters and escort staff move into formation around the cargo. Seal Yin watches the departure from among the others, unable to hide her concern for Hyunwoo. Hyung Pyo rides ahead while Hyunwoo follows with the convoy, now part of the journey. The narration declares that Hyunwoo's life truly begins with this first escort mission. Then the story rewinds to a few days earlier, when the Rising Dragon Corps first entered the Zhou clan head's office. Jo Il-hyun, head of the Zhou clan, receives them politely and asks after the alliance leader. He welcomes them in and offers them seats with perfect courtesy. Kiliang introduces himself formally as one of the Rising Dragon Corps' famed twin dragons. Jo Il-hyun assumes the other young man must be the Sword Dragon. Instead, the second youth introduces himself as Namgung Jin. Miryong then introduces herself as Kiliang's younger sister. Jo Il-hyun immediately recognizes the significance of the Ping clan and understands he is hosting major figures from Hebei. He even notes that Miryong's refinement and beauty would make her a worthy match for his son, revealing his political interest. With that in mind, he proposes that his children and the visitors spend time together through martial exchange, hoping daily contact will naturally bring them closer. Kiliang readily agrees, pleased to place themselves under the Zhou clan head's hospitality. Miryong quietly drinks and watches, already measuring the situation more carefully than the others. Only after that polite welcome does Jo Il-hyun reveal the real purpose of their stay. They are there to investigate whether the Green Forest Bandits' attack at Hengshan is tied to him, and to uncover proof. Even with an escort mission ahead, one of the agency women points out that her companion is more interested in courting the Zhou clan head's daughter than in the job itself. She notes that the young lady's attention has drifted elsewhere, toward an unremarkable porter instead of the man trying to impress her. The girl's fixation on that porter becomes obvious enough to unsettle the people around her. The teasing turns sharper as it is revealed that she has been watching the porter for days rather than the suitor pursuing her. The man dismisses the porter as no threat to his chances. He reassures himself that the porter will be tied up on escort work for months, giving him plenty of time to win Lady Seal Yin over. As the mission preparations continue, the escort party gathers in the courtyard. Before departure, the group shares one final meal together. Den Hyunwoo ignores everything else and gives his full attention to the food in front of him. He eats with complete concentration, as if nothing beyond the next bite matters. The simple meal clearly satisfies him more deeply than anyone expects. To Hyunwoo, freshly cooked food is one of the greatest pleasures he has known since leaving the cave. One of the escorts can only marvel at how solemnly Hyunwoo treats eating. Still, he urges Hyunwoo to eat well, warning that the road to Sichuan will be harsh because the destination lies in Tang clan territory, and the request came from the Tang clan's main line. The mission is confirmed to be for the Sichuan Tang clan itself. An elder named Tang Hogwan arrives as the Tang clan's representative, immediately giving the mission greater weight. He is accompanied by Tang Qiaoji, another member of the Sichuan Tang clan. The escorts realize there is more to this job than an ordinary delivery. They learn that the Tang clan did not trust the Hunan escort agency alone and sent its own guards to accompany the cargo. That extra protection makes it clear the shipment is valuable enough to invite serious danger. Hyunwoo listens while still eating, quietly taking in the implications. Tang Hogwan suddenly senses something unusual among the porters, as if a hidden presence has caught his attention. He casually flicks away the butterfly that drew his notice, treating it as a nuisance. The insect is destroyed instantly by a burst of force from his fingertip. The display reveals that even his smallest movements carry lethal precision. Tang Qiaoji asks what his elder noticed. Tang Hogwan says that one of the porters is giving off an unusual energy, though he cannot yet identify who it is. The elder's suspicion sharpens as he demands to know which porter it is. Among the ordinary-looking carriers, no one stands out at first glance. Hyunwoo remains expressionless, betraying nothing as the scrutiny passes over him. The caravan horses are brought forward, and the mission is ready to move. Escort leader Ma Yuk reports that all preparations are complete and formally places the convoy at Tang Hogwan's disposal. Tang Hogwan wonders whether the formidable energy he sensed might have belonged to Ma Yuk instead. He orders an immediate departure, while privately questioning just how strong Ma Yuk really is. Ma Yuk turns to the escorts and porters and barks for everyone to finish up and listen. He reminds them that the Hunan escort agency prides itself on speed and declares that a route that normally takes 4 months must be finished in only a month and a half. The men answer obediently, though many are already rattled by the demand. One escort quietly warns Hyunwoo that anyone who falls behind Ma Yuk's pace will be expelled on the spot. Ma Yuk gives the final order to move out. Hyunwoo is puzzled by the repeated warning not to fall behind, still not grasping what that threat really means. The convoy surges forward at once, carts and horses moving at a punishing speed. It becomes clear why Ma Yuk's missions are infamous. Even the porters are expected to run fast enough to keep pace with the horses and wagons. Hyunwoo still does not understand the concern, while another porter struggles to breathe and urges him to endure until the next rest. To everyone else's disbelief, Hyunwoo matches the brutal pace effortlessly, as if he were merely taking a walk. The caravan tears through the day without slowing, racing on until sunset. That night, while the others collapse from exhaustion, Hyunwoo remains standing and alert enough that the escorts wonder whether he even sleeps normally. The relentless march continues the next day with no easing of the pace. By the time they reach Pingding Mountain, they have covered in a day what should have taken 4. Their impossible speed is interrupted when something suddenly drops from above. Tang Qiaoji shouts for the convoy to halt. A spear-like weapon crashes down from the trees with explosive force, signaling an ambush. Ma Yuk immediately draws his sword while still mounted. He cuts through the incoming strike before it can hit the convoy head-on. He demands that the attackers show themselves. A voice from the forest answers that the question should be asked of the convoy instead. A band of armed men emerges from the trees and surrounds the road. Their leader announces that the convoy has entered Green Forest bandit territory and offers to spare lives only if the goods are abandoned. Tang Hogwan tells his side not to panic yet, judging that ordinary Green Forest bandits can be handled and deciding to observe first. One escort tries to calm Hyungwoo by saying these bandits usually back off if paid a toll. Ma Yuk rejects that idea outright and orders the road cleared instead of paying. The bald bandit leader grins, unimpressed by Ma Yuk's defiance. He bats aside the offered payment and makes it clear he wants the entire cargo, not a token fee. He demands the goods and orders the convoy to disappear if it wants to live. Then he launches a sudden aerial attack straight at Ma Yuk. The escorts are caught off guard by how abruptly and aggressively he moves. Hyungwoo immediately senses genuine killing intent from the attacker. Ma Yuk meets the first blow from horseback and blocks it in midair. The bandit twists through the clash and presses the attack with frightening agility. Ma Yuk is struck hard enough to spit blood, revealing that this is no ordinary roadside thug. Even as the fight breaks open, the convoy horses keep surging and the battlefield descends into chaos. The bandit leader mocks the Hunan escort agency and orders his men to slaughter everyone instead of merely robbing them. His subordinates obey at once and rush the convoy from all sides. The escorts panic at the sheer number of attackers now flooding the road. Tang Hogwan realizes these enemies are far too organized and skilled to be common Green Forest bandits and demands to know who truly sent them. The bald attacker laughs at the mistake and boasts that they are the so-called heroes of the Green Forest bandits, not mere rabble. He charges Tang Hogwan directly, eager to kill the old man himself. Tang Hogwan coldly decides that because they chose to overreach, they have forfeited any chance of survival. With a flick of hidden force, he drives a needle-like projectile through a tree with explosive power. The tiny weapon buries itself deep enough to show that Tang Hogwan's concealed arts are monstrously deadly. The bandit leader is stunned by what he has just seen. He cannot comprehend how something as small as a needle could strike with that level of force. For a moment, the shock of Tang Hogwan's technique freezes the attackers. The surrounding bandits recoil, suddenly aware they may have misjudged their prey. Tang Hogwan declares that anyone who covets Tang clan property has chosen death. He unleashes a storm of hidden weapons, making it clear the bandits were fools to think they could touch the cargo at all. Needles rain across the battlefield, cutting down men before they can even react. Bandits begin dropping one after another under the barrage. The slaughter continues as more attackers are pierced through the chest and throat. Yet Tang Hogwan quickly realizes the first wave was only bait, because another group is already approaching from deeper in the forest. A masked force reveals itself as Val Phantom Hall and admits they can no longer hold back now that Tang Hogwan has personally intervened. Their leader's order is absolute: leave no one alive. Tang Hogwan warns his own side that these newcomers are the true threat and tells Tang Qiaoji to prepare for a real battle. He also orders the Tang guards to protect the escort item even if every member of the Hunan escort agency dies. He reminds them that they were handpicked as elites, and that the cargo matters more than the lives of the hired escorts. The masked assassins rush in, carrying out their extermination order without hesitation. The battlefield turns into a massacre as the vile Phantom Hall cuts through escorts and porters alike. Tang Qiaoji and the Tang guards are forced into a defensive struggle, while the hired men are carved down around them. Ma Yuk fights desperately to hold the line, but even he is being overwhelmed. Amid the bloodshed, Hyungwoo stands strangely calm, still not moving with the urgency everyone else expects. While cries to hold formation ring out around him, he remains silent and detached. Another escort is cut down right beside him. Ma Yuk realizes in horror that the agency's warriors are no match for these assassins, while the Tang clan still refuses to fully commit its own blades for the agency's sake. A nearby escort is struck down as the situation worsens by the second. Blood spatters Hyungwoo's face, but even that barely changes his expression. The bearded escort who had looked after him is cornered and about to be killed. That sight triggers Hyungwoo's memory of the man kindly offering him food before the journey. For the first time, Hyungwoo draws his sword and releases a terrifying surge of power. A pillar of blue lightning-like force erupts from him, blasting through the attackers around the endangered escort. The assassins caught in the strike are obliterated before they can defend themselves. The bearded escort stares in disbelief as the enemies behind him vanish in the explosion. The surviving assassins are shaken, unable to explain the blast except as something like a lightning strike. The bearded escort immediately guesses that Hyungwoo must have used heavenly thunder. He begs Hyungwoo to help the others as well. Hyungwoo answers plainly that he only intervened because that man once saved him. The escort desperately argues that everyone here is part of the same mission and pleads for him to save them too. Even as he begs, Ma Yuk is still fighting for his life against the assassins. Terrified porters drop to their knees and try to explain that they are only laborers with no martial power at all. Hyungwoo admits he does not really understand their distinctions or excuses. Still, because he was directly asked, he decides to act. He launches forward with overwhelming speed, his intent finally fixed on ending the battle. The escorts can barely follow his movement, seeing only a blur pass through the field. Ma Yuk is nearly struck down before Hyunwoo's intervention reaches him. Tang Hogwan also joins the counterattack, crushing nearby assassins while Hyunwoo tears through the rest. One assassin tries to dismiss Tang Hogwan's hidden weapons and offer surrender if the cargo is abandoned, but the plea comes too late. Even Tang Hogwan can only barely perceive Hyunwoo's speed as the young man flashes past him. It becomes clear that among everyone present, only Tang Hogwan can faintly track Hyunwoo's movements at all. Hyunwoo judges that a single decisive strike should be enough. He releases a sweeping wave of heavenly thunder that races across the battlefield and engulfs the remaining enemies. When the light fades, Hyunwoo stands calm again, as if nothing extraordinary happened. The last traces of the attack scatter into the sky, leaving the forest suddenly quiet. Far away, someone receives the unbelievable report that Vile Phantom Hall has been wiped out. That someone is Wu Mun Hai, leader of Vile Phantom Hall and a woman of the Wu Mun clan, who questions how the force she sent could have failed against the Hunan escorts and Tang Hogwan. Her subordinate apologizes and explains that their intelligence missed the presence of an unexpected martial master among the convoy, but she cuts off any suggestion of sending others. The subordinate is stunned when she decides to go personally. Wu Mun Hai resolves to identify the mysterious martial master with her own eyes. The story shifts to the Wu Mun clan, a power outside the 5 great clans but influential enough to rival them. Its wealth and reach are immense, and it has secretly been receiving leaked information from within the Sichuan Tang clan. A report reaches the Wu Mun clan head that the Tang clan and the Hua clan have jointly succeeded in manufacturing thunderclap bombs and are transporting 5 wagons of them through the Hunan escort agency. Wu Mun Huang, head of the Wu Mun clan, realizes this means the Tang clan has recovered the lost method once tied to the vanished thunderclap sect. He is further told that the Hua clan head is actually descended from that sect, explaining how such a weapon could be recreated. The implication is enormous. A lost art capable of changing the balance of power has returned to the world. Wu Mun Huang concludes that with 5 wagons of thunderclap bombs, entire sects could be erased with ease. He decides the Wu Mun clan must seize both the bombs and the manufacturing method for itself. His ambition hardens into immediate action. Then his subordinate nervously reveals an even worse problem. The young lady has overheard everything and left with Vile Phantom Hall. Wu Mun Huang is jolted into panic and demands to know where she went. He is told she has likely already headed toward Pingding Mountain. Wu Mun Hai rides toward the battlefield with calm confidence, already moving on her own agenda. Back at Pingding Mountain, Hyunwoo's intervention allows the Hunan escort agency to destroy the enemy force, but the victory comes at a terrible cost because nearly all of the escort warriors are dead. In the aftermath, only the badly wounded Ma Yuk and one escort warrior named Hyungpyo remain alive from the agency, while Hyunwoo stands beside the surviving wagons. The merchants admit that most of the remaining workers are too frightened to be of any real use. Seeing the escort force in shambles, one side urges abandoning this mountain route and hiring another agency, but the elder insists they must trust this escort to the end. His younger companion cannot accept that choice and argues they should switch to a small local group now that Heavenly Thunder is supposedly available. The elder is startled to hear that rumor, and the younger man excitedly assumes his uncle secretly mastered the Tang clan's Heavenly Thunder technique. The old man dismisses that praise and reveals the Heavenly Thunder that wiped out their attackers was not his doing at all. That confession shocks the younger man, who immediately demands to know who really used it. The elder narrows his eyes and prepares to name the true source. He identifies the swordsman Porter Dan Hyunwoo as the one behind that overwhelming power. The elder directly questions Hyunwoo about what sect he belongs to. Hyunwoo does not even understand the question until the elder explains he means the school where he learned martial arts. Hyunwoo answers with bitterness that Cheon Jija never taught them martial arts at all. He says they were only cast into hell, and whatever martial skill he has was earned much later through suffering. He makes clear that his strength was forged alone in repeated fights on the edge of death, not inherited from any master. Because of that, he says he has no sect to name. The elder is left reeling at the idea that someone this strong rose without any formal lineage. Another escort warrior quickly tries to smooth things over before the elder takes offense at Hyunwoo's bluntness. He begs the elder to excuse Hyunwoo as a mountain recluse who does not understand proper manners. The elder decides that arrogance aside, Hyunwoo's strength is undeniable and useful for the dangerous road ahead. Noting that Hyunwoo listens to this escort warrior, the elder begins to settle on a practical solution, while the warrior quietly warns Hyunwoo to stop talking. The elder unexpectedly praises that escort warrior instead, catching him completely off guard. He appoints him to replace the fallen leader Ma Yuk and command the escort mission, believing that will keep them under the protection of the man who can wield Heavenly Thunder. The newly chosen man, Hyungpyo, is stunned by the sudden promotion. Even while injured, Ma Yuk accepts the decision and says he will ride back to the Hunan escort agency to report the attack and request reinforcements. Before leaving, he orders Hyungpyo to take charge of the remaining men. Hyungpyo steels himself and accepts that someone has to bear responsibility now. He formally vows to serve as escort leader and deliver the mission safely to Sichuan. Satisfied, the elder postpones departure until morning since they can travel no farther that day. His younger companion still struggles to believe that a mere porter could be a supreme master of Heavenly Thunder. Hyunwoo remains calm and unreadable, while the others try to process what he is. with Young Pyo now leading the Hunan Escort Agency's mission resumes, and everyone is told to rest while they still can. At the same time, the wounded Ma Yuk rides hard through the night to report the ambush as quickly as possible. As he races back, he worries that even Hyungwoo's strength may not be enough if the enemy keeps pressing, so reinforcements are urgently needed. During the ride, he senses something strange moving through the night sky and realizes he is not alone on the road. He recognizes that whatever is approaching is also heading toward the Hunan Escort Agency, and dread pushes him to hurry even faster. A flash in his eye reveals the truth too late. A chained sickle is already closing in on him. The hidden weapon lashes out and tears into him while he is still mounted. The strike rips him from the saddle and sends blood and steel spinning through the air. The assassin's weapon whirls back through the night as the ambush unfolds. A whole squad of enemies drops from above to surround the road. They are revealed as the Ghost Masked Assassins, an assassination unit serving the Blood Demon being. Their leader reports that the escort agency's people have already been dealt with. Their next target is the Zhou clan estate, and they move on without delay. Elsewhere at the Zhou estate, the clan head and his chief steward are still working late, with the steward offering to stop for the night. The clan head refuses, saying work and training only become harder when delayed, so they should finish while they can. The steward suddenly senses something wrong and turns serious. A drop of ink falls from his brush as his attention shifts from paperwork to danger. He feels an overwhelming hostile presence closing in on the estate. The first signs of bloodshed erupt outside before anyone can react. More blood splashes across the grounds as the attack spreads through the compound. A guard is cut down mid-warning, and the estate scrambles to arm itself against a sudden enemy assault. The clan head immediately realizes his foreboding was correct. The masked assassins storm the Zhou estate under orders to exterminate everyone and leave no survivor. The chief steward charges out in fury to confront the invaders. Someone urgently tries to stop him, but the attack is already underway. The clan head turns in alarm as the situation worsens around him. The steward warns that the killing intent outside is far beyond ordinary, and may be too much even for the clan head to suppress alone. Outside, the assassins carve through the estate's defenders in a brutal massacre. The steward decides the clan head's place is no longer in the fight outside but with the people who must be protected. He rushes deeper into the estate to carry out that duty. He bursts into the inner quarters, startling Seal Yin with the urgency of his arrival. Without wasting time, he orders her to flee immediately and gather her things. Seal Yin is confused and terrified, and her first thought is for her father. Outside, the night is filled with screams for help as the estate burns. The assassins butcher fleeing residents while panic spreads through the flames. Their commander expands the slaughter order to include even the people of the Hunan Escort Agency. Meanwhile, horses are driven hard through the forest as survivors try to escape. The chief steward leads Seal Yin and a small group away from the burning estate at full speed. Behind them, the Zhou clan estate is consumed by fire. Seal Yin realizes in horror that the disaster has spread beyond her home and even reached the Hunan Escort Agency. The steward urges her not to look back and to focus only on escaping alive. When she protests that her father is still behind, he reminds her that her father is no ordinary man. He tells her to trust Zhou Il-Hyan, the strongest spear in Hunan and the head of the Zhou clan. Back at the estate, Zhou Il-Hyan unleashes his spear and enters the battle in earnest. His power blasts apart the surroundings and tears through the attacker's formation. The steward's faith proves justified, because Zhou Il-Hyan stands as a warrior without equal in the region. Even the assassins pause as they recognize the Zhou clan head has finally stepped forward. Zhou Il-Hyan advances through the wreckage with overwhelming force. The assassin's leader orders his men to bring him down and take his head. Far away, the steward keeps pressing Seal Yin onward, insisting her father is buying time with his life for her sake. Zhou backs him up and begs Seal Yin to trust her father's strength, though she still cannot let go. The steward decides they must hide for now and asks the Rising Dragon Corps to accompany them as they head toward the Murim Alliance. Zhou is appalled that the steward is already talking about retreating from Hunan entirely. The steward argues that after witnessing the enemy's martial power, they should understand that only the Murim Alliance can be warned in time. Zhou agrees in principle but points out that the assassins will soon be on their heels. Pressed for options, he starts thinking of the only person who might still change their fate. He remembers the porter who drove off the Green Forest bandits at Hingshan, and realizes Hyungwoo may be their last hope. Unable to rely on the alliance in time, the steward decides they must seek another path. He sends the escort group on ahead with his blessing while he changes course. He resolves to catch up with the escort mission bound for Sichuan and bring back help. Seal Yin clings to that hope, believing Hyungwoo may be the one person who can save them now. As they flee, she silently prays for her father's survival. Back at the ruined estate, the masked killers stand over corpses beneath the moon, convinced the Zhou bloodline is finished. Zhou Il-Hyan, bloodied but still standing, grips his spear and refuses to fall. He demands to know who these attackers are, and why they have targeted the Zhou clan. The assassins part as a darker figure laughs from behind them. That hidden leader offers to explain the reason before Zhou Il-Hyan dies. Zhou Il-Hyan orders the speaker to reveal himself. A surge of sinister red power answers him before the man fully steps out. Zhou Il-Hyan recognizes that presence, and is stunned that the man before him is still alive. The stranger cuts him off and rejects the old name. Zhou Il-Hyan almost speaks. He declares that he abandoned that former identity long ago. By daylight over the ashes, he mocks the destruction of the Zhou clan estate as if admiring a completed work. He praises his subordinate Void Shadow for the massacre and confirms that the remaining assassins are hunting the last members of the Zhou bloodline. Void Shadow still cannot understand why this place matters so much to his master. The man reveals himself as the blood demon being and says his hatred is rooted in the Zhou clan estate itself. He asks Void Shadow whether he knows the true relationship between him and Cheonjija. Void Shadow answers that he only knows they were rivals who fought with their lives on the line. The blood demon being says that rivalry was deeper than that, a bond so profound that only he remains from it now. He explains that this estate was where Cheonjija first planned to raise 100 martial masters to stop him. Destroying the Zhou clan here is therefore his opening move in erasing every plan Cheonjija ever left behind. He vows that the last scraps of the Zhou bloodline must also be wiped out. That order sends the pursuit racing through the night after the fleeing survivors. The chief steward realizes the assassins have nearly caught them and pushes everyone to keep moving until they reach the escort group. Zhou senses the danger closing in and braces himself. Red killing intent suddenly floods the road behind him as the pursuers arrive. The steward urges Zhou to keep Celine moving and promises he will catch up after delaying the enemy. Zhou refuses to abandon him and insists the steward takes Celine to safety instead. Their argument is cut short when a hook chain weapon slices toward them. The attack lands before Zhou can finish, warning that they will be caught. The steward cries out Zhou name as blood spills. Zhou is struck and thrown from his horse by the assassin's blow. Celine watches in horror as Zhou falls. The assassins surge in to finish the helpless survivors. One of them lunges at Celine, convinced he has finally cornered her. Celine screams as death closes in. The attack is interrupted in an instant by a violent impact from above. The assassins stop and look up, startled by a new presence. Nearby, the dying steward can only call Celine's name in despair. With his last strength, he laments that he still failed to protect her. Celine realizes the pursuit has ended in disaster and believes both her father and Zhou have fallen. The lead assassin mocks how far they ran and praises their desperate escape as pointless. He raises his blade and declares that this is where Celine's flight ends. Broken by terror, Celine begs for anyone at all to save her life. Her plea is answered by a sudden eruption of blue lightning. The assassin's blade shatters under the force of that strike. Celine stares in disbelief as hope returns in a flash. A figure wrapped in lightning drops into the clearing between her and the killers. She recognizes him at once as Hyunwoo. Hyunwoo says he heard her cry for help. Celine can only stare through tears, too overwhelmed to answer. At the same time, the escort convoy continues moving through the night, unaware of what is happening behind them. Hyunwoo's sudden disappearance is noticed among the escort warriors. Elsewhere, Celine's desperate plea still echoes in his mind as the reason he came. Back with the convoy, Hyungpyo turns and asks what made Hyunwoo stop. Hyunwoo calmly says he will be back soon. Hyungpyo is baffled as Hyunwoo leaves without explaining where he is going. A thunderous burst marks Hyunwoo's departure, as he launches himself away at impossible speed. Racing through the night, he confirms to himself that he heard the cry clearly. He arrives in a storm of lightning before the assassins, placing himself between them and Celine. The masked killers recoil in confusion and demand to know who this new enemy is. As her uncle lay dying, Celine begged Hyunwoo to protect her in his place. Hyunwoo silently accepted the weight of that last request. Satisfied that Celine would not be left alone, the old man let go of everything else. The assassins closed in anyway, deciding Hyunwoo would die with the rest. Before the attack reached her, Hyunwoo placed a hand on Celine and steadied her. That touch washed away the fear and exhaustion crushing her, as if he could calm her very being. He told her to stop crying. Then he promised the danger would end soon and face the assassins alone. Hyunwoo moved first with sudden, effortless speed. His sword and footwork burst outward in sweeping arcs that trapped the attackers before they could react. The assassins were overwhelmed by a martial art none of them recognized. In a single exchange, he cut through them with crushing finality. Celine watched nearly 20 assassins vanish in an instant, and realized how absolute his strength was. Seeing him, she could not help wondering whether power like his might have saved her clan. That thought sharpened into regret over everyone she had failed to protect. Meanwhile, Hyunwoo quietly vowed to return for the dead. He promised the fallen man a better resting place. Still lost and grieving, Celine turned to Hyunwoo because he was the only one left beside her. She admitted she did not know how to go on after losing her father and Join. Hyunwoo rejected the idea that she had to endure it completely alone. He revealed that he too had once survived a private hell by himself. Because someone had once reached out to him first, he decided he would now do the same for her. So instead of offering pity, he gave her a simple order to keep living. He told her to honor the dead by choosing how she herself wanted to live. At first, Celine could barely imagine what that meant for her. Then she chose to keep moving forward by joining the escort mission herself. Hyunwoo accepted that decision and took hold of her so she could follow him. He warned her not to let go as they departed at once. She barely had time to question him before he moved. In the next instant, he launched them into the sky. Celine was swept up in his impossible speed, stunned by how easily he carried her. As they flew, she realized his movement art felt less like running and more like gliding through the clouds. Even her tears were stripped away by the wind. For Celine, being carried away by him brought more comfort than any words could have. She marveled that his movement was so smooth it felt like a casual walk despite the speed. That only made her uncle's death feel even smaller and more helpless by comparison. Unable to understand the gap between them, she asked how someone so close to her age could be this strong. Hyun-woo answered that such strength came only from fighting for a long time with death constantly at his side. When she asked who he had fought, he gave a chilling answer: monsters. Seo-yin tried to translate that into something she understood, and he let her call them demons if she wished. Her curiosity deepened, and she pressed him to explain more. Hyun-woo hesitated, weighed down by memories he did not want to reopen. To explain that past, he would have to describe the hell he had survived. That hell meant climbing over the bodies of 99 dead companions just to keep going. All of it had been for the sake of reaching Cheonjija. But Cheonjija died before Hyun-woo could take revenge, leaving his hatred unresolved. Rather than expose that wound, he put the story aside for another time. They did not stop until they reached the remaining members of the Hunan escort agency. Seo-yin was relieved to find familiar allies still alive. The escort party, led by Hyung-pyo, was equally shocked to see her arrive with Hyun-woo. There, Hyun-woo received unexpected news. Hyung-pyo confessed that he did not believe Cheonjija was truly dead. That claim caught both Seo-yin and Hyun-woo off guard. For Hyun-woo, the possibility that Cheonjija still lived reopened the path to revenge. The rumor changed everything. At the same time, Hyung-pyo delivered worse news. The Jo estate and the Hunan escort agency had both been destroyed. The surviving escorts immediately panicked over what future remained for them. Hyung-pyo apologized for bringing such devastating news in the middle of the mission. Seo-yin, despite her own losses, told him he was likely suffering even more for having to bear it. Hyung-pyo realized the attack and this news had shattered the group's morale so badly that the mission itself might fail. He searched desperately for some way to keep everyone moving, so he reminded them that completing the escort would still earn enough money for all of them to start over. He even argued that with Seo-yin still alive, the Hunan escort agency might someday be rebuilt. His words reached Seo-yin. She decided grief would have to wait because the surviving people of her clan still depended on her. She resolved to shoulder that responsibility first, grow stronger, and only then seek revenge for her family and clan. Once the group steadied itself, Hyun-woo asked if they were resuming the journey. Hyung-pyo answered yes and ordered the escort mission restarted. Elsewhere on the road, another group noticed Seo-yin among the convoy and was told to ignore her and focus on the cargo. Their leader cared less about her identity than about whether Hyun-woo remained with the escort. As the convoy moved again, the escorts hurried to keep formation around the wagons. While running, Seo-yin kept turning over Hyun-woo's claim that he had fought monsters for years. The more she thought about it, the less she could imagine what kind of life had shaped him. She returned to the question that mattered most to him. She asked directly whether Cheonjija was really dead. Hyun-woo answered that the world said Cheonjija had died 10 years ago, but only as rumor. That answer made him wonder whether revenge might still be possible after all. Hyung-pyo repeated that he did not trust the story of Cheonjija's death. Seo-yin listened as Hyun-woo fell into thought beside her. He pressed the point and asked again whether Cheonjija might still be alive. Hyung-pyo explained that too many details about the supposed death made no sense, especially how a sourceless rumor had somehow become accepted fact. To Hyun-woo, it sounded as if someone had deliberately spread the story across the whole martial world so everyone would believe Cheonjija was dead. When Seo-yin asked who would do that and why, Hyung-pyo could only offer a guess. His best theory was that Cheonjija himself wanted to disappear from public sight. In other words, the rumor may have been planted by Cheonjija personally. Seo-yin was stunned that a man might fake his own death so completely. For Hyun-woo, the mention of 10 years stirred a sharp recognition. Before the conversation could go further, Tang Hogwan ordered the entire escort to halt. A noble carriage had broken down ahead of them, and its owner apologized for blocking the road. The problem was a collapsed wheel that could not be repaired. The stranded party asked if their young lady could travel with the escort until the next village. Tang Hogwan immediately recognized the crest as belonging to the Woomun clan. Because the escort goods had already drawn attacks, he suspected this breakdown might be no coincidence. Even so, the request was answered before he could refuse. A woman introduced herself as Woomun Hai, daughter of the Woomun clan head. Her appearance instantly stunned Seo-yin and the men around her. The escorts were dazzled by her beauty, while Hyun-woo dismissed the commotion as noise. Woomun Hai stepped forward with effortless poise. The entire escort party turned toward her as if pulled by a spell. She floated into view with a grace that made even a simple approach feel theatrical. Her beauty left the whole escort party momentarily entranced. Even Tang Hogwan lost focus for a heartbeat just admiring her. Using that opening, Woomun Hai boarded the cargo wagon herself. She settled onto the load as though she belonged there. The way she seated herself made even that bold intrusion seem delicate and harmless. Only then did someone weakly object that passengers were not supposed to ride with the escort goods. Hyun-woo remained silent, watching without interest. Tang Hogwan, already swayed, compromised by allowing her to ride only until the next village. Hyung-pyo was shocked that even Tang Hogwan had yielded so easily. Woomun Hai sweetly thanked them and asked to be looked after on the road. The men around her melted at once, and Hyung-pyo realized this kind of weakness was happening here too. Trying to recover some order, Tang Hogwan suggested she move to the more comfortable front carriage instead. Woomun Hai refused, saying she should remain where she was because she was the one receiving help. She insisted on staying in the cargo wagon beside the goods. Tang Hogwan reassured himself that if Hyun-woo guarded that wagon, both the woman and the cargo would remain safe. With that uneasy compromise, he ordered the escort to move again. Wu Munhai smiled faintly to herself. Privately, she praised how easily the old man had agreed and switched her allies to a secret whispering technique. Her people confirmed that the escort was far weaker than expected, with only one true escort warrior and about 30 porters. After assessing them, Wu Munhai concluded that Tang Hogwan was the only martial master present. The ordinary escorts remained oblivious as the convoy rolled on. From the cargo itself, Wu Munhai realized the escort was carrying 5 wagon loads of thunderclap bombs. She recalled that these were devastating incendiary weapons once created by the Thunderclap sect, powerful enough to erase entire sects. Those weapons had once made the Thunderclap sect immensely influential. Ironically, the same fire weapons had also caused that sect's destruction. The sect vanished for centuries, which made the bombs' return to the world deeply suspicious. Wu Munhai noted that the Vile Phantom Hall had been wiped out without any signs of Thunderclap bomb use, which complicated everything. She began wondering who had stopped the Vile Phantom Hall's attack and destroyed her own side instead. Then something else caught her attention. She noticed Hyungwoo wore a porter's clothes but carried a sword, and that contradiction made him stand out to her. Though he seemed outwardly ordinary, she could not understand why he kept drawing her eye. A more personal shock followed when she realized something was wrong with the way he treated her. Since her arrival, Hyungwoo had not looked at her even once, and that indifference was unimaginable to her. For the first time, Wu Munhai faced a man who showed no interest in her beauty, and it wounded her pride. When she finally called out to the porter, Hyungwoo turned only because he was the only one she could mean. The instant their eyes met, Wu Munhai froze, struck not by desire but by his total lack of reaction. What stunned her most was his complete indifference. Humiliation quickly turned into anger, and she had to suppress the urge to lash out at him immediately. Instead, she swore to make Dan Hyungwoo submit to her somehow. That night, the escort halted to rest in the forest. The exhausted escorts collapsed where they could and tried to recover. Hyungwoo kept apart from them, standing watch with his sword at his side. Seo Yeon brought him a bowl of meat soup. Seeing that simple meal, Hyungwoo realized someone had quietly thought of him. Before he could respond, Seo Yeon urged him to eat while Wu Munhai approached from behind. Wu Munhai then moved with him into the night, matching his pace through the forest. She told him to follow her deeper in and promised answers to what he wanted to know. At the same time, she challenged him to keep up with her movement art if he could. As she led him on, she guessed that a porter carrying a sword must at least be curious about martial arts, and considered using the Wumun clan's techniques to draw him in. Confident in her allure and her movement art, Wu Munhai wondered whether even Hyungwoo could resist her for long. Wu Munhai decides that if this porter is truly the kind of man she fears, he will only disappoint her. Instead of keeping his distance, Dan Hyungwoo appears right in front of her and seizes control of the encounter. His calm stare makes it clear he is neither flustered nor intimidated by her status. Wu Munhai is shaken because even her clan's famed movement art cannot explain how he closed the distance so instantly. The sudden disruption snaps the tense private exchange. Her attendants realize Lady Wu Mun is with the porter and rush to her side in alarm. Jo Hwa, stunned, recognizes the porter by name and realizes Hyungwoo is involved. Hyungwoo remains expressionless, refusing to be drawn into their panic. Wu Munhai struggles to accept that a mere porter surpassed the movement skills she prides herself on. Unable to place him, she demands to know who he really is. He identifies himself only as Dan Hyungwoo and bluntly asks for Cheonji's location, more concerned about his cooling soup than her authority. When she claims ignorance, she is left baffled by his fixation on the soup. The answer becomes obvious when the bowl of soup she had been carrying is shown to be what matters to him. Since she cannot help him, Hyungwoo turns to leave, and Wu Munhai hurriedly tries to stop him because she still wants answers. Her guards misread the situation as an assault on their lady and charge him in fury. They condemn him for touching Lady Wu Mun and decide a porter deserves death for such insolence. Wu Munhai urgently tries to stop her men before they escalate the mistake. Hyungwoo's eyes harden as he judges the threat without moving. The guards commit to the attack, convinced their numbers and blades will settle the matter. Before they can strike, Hyungwoo vanishes from their sight and leaves them staring at empty air. Wu Munhai realizes this was not superior footwork at all but something closer to outright disappearance. In the next instant, he moves elsewhere before anyone can track him. Jo Hwa is swept up in the sudden motion and loses all sense of what just happened. She can only stare, trying to understand where he went. When she looks down, the bowl is gone from her hands. Hyungwoo has already reclaimed the soup and calmly drinks from it as if the chaos around him is irrelevant. Satisfied that it is still warm, he returns beside Jo Hwa so casually that she cannot tell when he came back. When she asks about the woman who went with him, he dismisses Wu Munhai as someone who will return whenever she pleases. Jo Hwa, still distracted, blurts out that Lady Wu Mun is extraordinarily beautiful. Hyungwoo agrees only in the abstract, saying such beauty could tempt any man, which makes Jo Hwa nervously agree. Gathering courage, Jo Hwa asks what he thinks of her and whether he finds her pretty. He repeats the question as if weighing it with no concern for her feelings. Jo Hwa awkwardly confirms that she means herself. Hyungwoo answers with brutal honesty that she is not as beautiful as Wu Munhai, and Jo Hwa forces herself to accept it. He follows that up by saying he does not like beautiful women anyway. Jo Hwa, confused rather than comforted, asks why. Hyungwoo explains that the temptation of a beautiful woman leads to death, revealing a grim lesson from his past. Watching from a distance, Wu Munhai becomes convinced that this porter is no ordinary laborer at all. Her men conclude he must be the martial master who destroyed the Vile Phantom Hall, yet admit they still know almost nothing about him. Wu Munhai is left wondering what kind of man Dan Hyungwoo truly is. As the escort mission continues, the Hunan Escort Agency draws close to its destination in Sichuan. Jo-Hwa keeps turning over Hyungwoo's warning about beautiful women and senses it came from a life far harsher than she imagined. Hyung-pyo addresses her while they travel, pulling her attention back to the road. He warns that the atmosphere is growing stranger and more dangerous the nearer they get to their destination. The convoy presses on despite the unease. Other veterans, especially Tang Hogwan and Tang Kialji, feel the danger even more sharply than Hyung-pyo does. They conclude that if any enemy remains bold enough to strike before they reach the Tang estate, it must be the Black Viper sect. The narration explains that the Black Viper sect rose rapidly over the last decade and became the only force in Sichuan capable of threatening the Tang clan. The escort continues under mounting tension. Tang Hogwan suspects the enemy knew too much and wonders whether information leaked from inside the Tang clan itself. When Jo-Hwa starts warning Hyungwoo about a possible ambush, he cuts in and states there are about 100 enemies waiting. His certainty shocks her, and Wu Munhai alike. Wu Munhai is stunned that he can estimate the number of hidden enemies from their presence alone. The first wave of hidden attackers finally reveals itself from the forest. Dozens of Black Viper sect fighters descend at once, confirming Hyungwoo's warning. Hyungwoo calmly notes that only around 50 have shown themselves so far. The elder orders Hyungwoo to stay with the escort goods, insisting the Tang side can easily handle this first wave. Tang Hogwan launches into battle and tears through the attackers with overwhelming force. His confidence proves justified as he treats the enemy as little more than rabble. Hyung-pyo asks Hyungwoo whether the Tang elder and his men will be alright. Hyungwoo answers without hesitation that there is nothing to worry about because the old man will win. The battlefield quickly turns into a massacre of the exposed Black Viper fighters. As Hyungwoo predicted, the sect's rapid growth means nothing against true elite warriors. For someone like the Tang elder, numbers alone are meaningless. Even so, Wu Munhai cannot hide her discomfort as she watches the Tang side crush 50 enemies with ease. She begins to wonder whether she underestimated the Sichuan Tang clan itself. At the same time, she cannot ignore that Hyungwoo had already seen through the attack before anyone else. She realizes that if the other 50 hidden elsewhere had joined the battle, her own ambush force would have been doomed. That makes retreat seem like the only sensible option for her concealed troops. But she worries that giving the withdrawal order will expose them to Hyungwoo's notice. Without even turning, Hyungwoo tells the hidden listeners that he will not stop them if they choose to leave. The Wu Mun men are horrified that he has answered them directly. They realize he somehow overheard their secret frequency whispering technique. Hyungwoo warns them plainly that if they do not back off, he will kill them all. Wu Munhai immediately understands that he is not bluffing. Accepting his judgment, she orders Youngsa to deliver the withdrawal command. Youngsa obeys at once and rushes off to relay the order. Wu Munhai thanks Hyungwoo for sparing her clan's hidden warriors and admits she cannot read him at all. The narration reveals that Hyungwoo's choice was not made for her sake alone. What truly held his attention was an even more terrifying killing intent lurking beyond the Wu Mun ambush. Meanwhile, Tang Hogwan continues his side of the battle. He wipes out the Black Viper sect's vanguard with ease. From deeper in the forest, hidden observers report that the vanguard has been annihilated. Their leader reveals that the first wave was only bait meant to make the victors relax and sleep carelessly. Once that happened, the real killers, the Crimson Moon Corps, were supposed to strike. The assassins begin moving into position under cover of darkness. Believing everything is proceeding according to plan, they prepare for the true attack. At the same time, because Hyungwoo chose not to interfere, Wu Munhai's hidden troops withdraw safely on her order. Even after those 50 leave, Hyungwoo feels the murderous pressure in the forest growing thicker rather than fading. That night, the escort party decides to camp where they are. Hyung-pyo tells Jo-Hwa that Wu Munhai will sleep in a tent beside the carriage and asks whether Jo-Hwa wants to join her. Jo-Hwa refuses special comfort, saying she should not be the only one resting well. She begins speaking honestly about what she has learned. Jo-Hwa admits she once looked down on the escort agency because its work seemed peaceful and simple. But after joining a mission herself, she finally understood the truth. The agency's peace existed only because escorts and porters risked their lives to bear the burden of every mission. Moved by that realization, she declares that as a member of the Hunan Escort Agency she will sleep alongside the others. She goes further and vows to become the head of the agency through merit, not merely because she is the Zhou clan's young lady. Seeing Hyungwoo nearby, she asks if he has something to say about that. She presses him to speak his mind. Hyungwoo answers that escort work begins with being a porter. Jo-Hwa awkwardly accepts the point, realizing he is technically right. Taking his word seriously, she immediately asks to be taught how to become a first-rate porter, leaving Hyung-pyo speechless. Hyung-pyo is struck by how much Jo-Hwa has matured in such a short time. Night deepens over the camp as everyone settles in. The narration reveals the Crimson Moon Corps as the Black Viper sect's painstakingly cultivated assassin unit, specializing in ambush, covert strikes, and concealment. Elsewhere in the dark, the assassins wait together in silence. Their concealment is formidable not just because they blend into shadows, but because their presence itself nearly disappears. They also move as one body, allowing them to complete a kill before a target can react. Their missions are meant to end in an instant. Back at camp, the fire burns low while the escort party sleeps. The camp appears quiet and defenseless, with wagons, horses, and sleeping figures spread around the fire. Tang Hogwan rests among his people, unaware that assassins are already closing in. Zhou Hua sleeps nearby as the danger reaches the camp itself. Hyunwoo alone rises, already prepared to move. He slips into the forest before the hidden killers can act. One of the Crimson Moon assassins watches from concealment, believing himself unseen. Their leader quietly orders every member of the Crimson Moon Corps to prepare for the strike. The assassins answer in unison and begin their coordinated advance. Hyunwoo appears behind one of them and calmly notes that he found his hiding place. The assassin barely has time to register the intrusion before Hyunwoo moves. As the leader starts counting down to launch the attack, Hyunwoo begins dismantling the core before the count can finish. At the count of 1, the first assassin is seized and neutralized instantly. Hyunwoo flows through the trees with overwhelming speed, striking before any warning can spread. One assassin is smashed down before he can even draw a breath to alert the others. The leader reaches 2, still unaware that his force is already collapsing. Another assassin falls, stunned and helpless. By the time the leader reaches 3 and gives the signal, the attack has already failed. He orders his men to kill everyone and target the most dangerous person first, not realizing that person has already found them. An assassin dives toward Tang Hogwan to eliminate him in his sleep. The attacker gloats that the thunderclap bombs the Tang side hauled here will ultimately be turned against them. His blade is stopped at the last instant by a flash of Hyunwoo's sword. Hyunwoo stands over Tang Hogwan and intercepts the assassination attempt before it can land. The surviving assassins panic as they realize their sentries are still alive and the Crimson Moon Corps has somehow been exposed. The escort guards, now awake, demand to know who these intruders are and how they appeared without leaving any trace. The assassin leader can only curse as the plan unravels. Hyunwoo casually asks whether Crimson Moon Corps is the name of their group, making clear he has already heard everything. The leader is horrified that Hyunwoo even overheard their secret whispering technique. Hyunwoo informs him that the Crimson Moon Corps is finished, and he is the only one left. Driven into desperation, the leader calls Hyunwoo a monster and demands to know where such a man came from. Hyunwoo coldly tells him to go join his comrades. He unleashes a final sword stroke charged with overwhelming force. The assassin realizes too late that the Black Viper's expensive, carefully prepared plan is ending in total ruin. The forest is swallowed by the aftermath of Hyunwoo's strike. Tang Hogwan and the others wake to chaos and are told the woods are littered with dead assassins. Wu Munhai calmly concludes that the enemy's remnants must have tried one last surprise attack. Zhou Hua's first concern is whether the porters survived. Hyung Pyo reassures her that all of their people are safe and only the enemies died. Everyone understands that they were spared only because Hyunwoo intervened before the assassins could strike. Hyunwoo says nothing more, leaving the others to stare at the quiet porter who saved them all. Zhou Seolyin realizes once again that Dan Hyunwoo saved them. Wu Munhai admits Hyunwoo is neither simply kind nor cruel in any predictable way. She concludes that Hyunwoo is impossible to read, which only deepens his mystery. The battered convoy pushes onward at speed after surviving the latest danger. With Hyunwoo's help, the escort party escapes the crisis and continues without further attacks. They finally reach Sichuan province safely. As the end of the deadly mission comes into sight, the escorts relax and start joking about finally drinking in peace. But Wu Munhai hesitates, drawing Zhou Seolyin's attention. Wu Munhai asks what is troubling her. Zhou Seolyin reminds her that she had said she needed to stop somewhere before Chengdu. Wu Munhai reassures her that she will leave on her own when the time comes. Zhou Seolyin accepts that answer, while Wu Munhai privately dismisses her as naive. Hyung Pyo warns Hyunwoo that things may become complicated once they reach the Tang clan, but Hyunwoo misses the implication. Hyung Pyo explains that the AK clan lies near the Tang clan and reminds him that his late friend wanted him to go there. He urges Hyunwoo to meet that friend's family out of respect for their bond. That suggestion revives Hyunwoo's memory of AK Seji's dying apology to his father. Moved by that promise, Hyunwoo decides to go to the AK clan immediately. At last, the Hunan escort agency's party arrives in Sichuan. The Tang clan's elder welcomes the returning convoy and orders the goods brought inside without ceremony. Hyung Pyo and Zhou Seolyin take in the fact that they have truly reached Sichuan. The elder pays the escorts what was promised for the mission. He formally acknowledges Zhou Seolyin as the new head of the escort agency and offers future support, which she gratefully accepts. For Zhou Seolyin, this payment is the first she receives as agency head. The moment overwhelms her and brings tears to her eyes. The memory of losing her entire clan still hangs over that small victory. Because she now leads what remains, the payment carries the weight of survival and inheritance. Hyung Pyo comforts her and promises that things will improve from here. Zhou Seolyin steadies herself and resolves to stay strong for the sake of those still alive. She thanks Hyung Pyo and asks him to keep supporting her as she embraces her new role. Meanwhile, Wu Munhai's group continues on toward the Tang clan. Her followers regret failing to seize the thunderclap bombs and suggest retreating. Wu Munhai refuses, insisting the bombs must still be secured before the main clan learns of them. She declares that the Wumun clan never gives up on what it wants, no matter the cost. Yet what she wants most at that moment is no longer the bombs. Her true target has become Dan Hyunwoo himself. After reaching the Tang clan, Hyunwoo becomes the focus of everyone whose life he saved. The escorts and survivors all view the astonishing young martial artist through their own gratitude and awe. Hyun-woo, however, is thinking only of the AK clan. He recalls Hyung-pyo's words about the nearby clan and AK Seji's family. When the Tang elder offers them rest, Hyung-pyo declines because he and Hyun-woo have somewhere personal to go. Their abrupt departure shocks the elder. Hyun-woo leaps away and takes position high above the city to search from a better vantage. He focuses himself and begins tracing the surrounding energies. Remembering AK Seji, he searches for a similar flow of inner power. He senses a matching energy somewhere in the city and confirms the AK clan's presence. By evening, Jo Seol-yeon is settled at an inn while the others prepare to rest. The escorts banter clumsily around her until she notices Hyun-woo and Hyung-pyo slipping away. Hyung-pyo avoids explaining and says they will tell her after they return. Hyun-woo silently studies her before leaving. He raises his hand as if deciding on something. Then he reaches over Jo Seol-yeon instead of simply walking away. He places a hand on her head and quietly channels something into her, leaving her confused. Jo Seol-yeon feels a warm energy spread through her body and instinctively relaxes into it. Hyun-woo promises that he will return. With that, he and Hyung-pyo rush out toward the AK clan. Jo Seol-yeon can only watch them go, unsettled and thoughtful. As they race through the city, Hyung-pyo realizes someone is following them. Woo Man-hai and her subordinate are indeed chasing after them without hesitation. Hyung-pyo is stunned that she has no intention of turning back. He is even more baffled that she is blindly following them without knowing their destination. Hyun-woo decides their current pace is too slow. He places his hand on Hyung-pyo's back and sends inner energy into him while they run. That support compensates for Hyung-pyo's distraction and boosts his movement. Hyung-pyo immediately feels his steps lighten and his speed increase. Reinvigorated, he surges ahead toward the AK clan estate. Woo Man-hai is left shocked by the sudden burst of speed and begins to suspect the escorts were hiding their true ability. The gap widens as Hyun-woo and Hyung-pyo disappear toward the outskirts of Chengdu. Hyun-woo keeps pace effortlessly while Hyung-pyo races beside him in amazement. By nightfall, they reach the outskirts of Chengdu. They come to a stop before a large estate. Hyun-woo and Hyung-pyo arrive at the AK clan estate. Hyung-pyo asks if Hyun-woo is ready and moves to enter. Behind them, Woo Man-hai's pursuers finally close the distance. Woo Man-hai catches up just as the two men reach the gate. Hyung-pyo notices the estate is strangely unguarded and fears something may already be wrong. He knocks on the gate to test whether anyone is inside. A red-haired man opens the door and faces them with immediate tension. His expression makes clear that he is already on edge. Hyun-woo instantly sees a resemblance to AK Seji and realizes this man must be family. The man refuses them entry, but Hyung-pyo quickly asks whether he knows AK Seji. The name shocks him at once. He demands to know who they are and why they are looking for Seji. Hyung-pyo is rattled by the murderous intent pouring from him over a single name. The pressure becomes so intense that Hyung-pyo can barely breathe. Hyun-woo moves in front of him without flinching. When Hyung-pyo reaches his limit, Hyun-woo steps in and counters the killing intent with even stronger inner energy. He shields Hyung-pyo completely and breaks the pressure. That resistance only enrages the red-haired man further. Hyun-woo remains calm and unreadable in the face of it. The man grabs his weapon, ready to escalate from pressure to violence. He accuses Hyun-woo of insulting him and lashes out in fury. Hyun-woo does not even bother to evade. Watching from behind, Woo Man-hai cannot understand why he is standing still. Hyung-pyo hurriedly explains that Hyun-woo is AK Seji's friend, not an enemy. That claim halts the attacker for a moment. Hyun-woo calmly introduces himself by name. Hyung-pyo adds that Hyun-woo has lived apart from society for a long time and lacks worldly manners. The red-haired man identifies himself as AK Woong and reveals that AK Seji was his nephew who vanished 10 years ago. He urgently asks whether they met Seji and where he is now. Hyun-woo is shaken to learn that both Cheon-ji's death and Seji's disappearance happened only 10 years earlier. He realizes that the hellish time he endured felt far longer than the years that actually passed outside. AK Woong presses him desperately for Seji's whereabouts. Hyun-woo understands that the first truth he must give this family is the cruelest one. He tells them that his friend AK Seji is dead. The words hit AK Woong like a physical blow. Consumed by grief and rage, AK Woong attacks Hyun-woo again. He brings his weapon down with murderous force. Hyung-pyo can only cry out in horror. Woo Man-hai realizes too late that this is going too far. She shouts for AK Woong to stop. She even moves to intervene personally. Her subordinate warns her that stepping in is dangerous. AK Woong drives forward, determined to kill. Woo Man-hai braces herself, expecting bloodshed. But before she can act, someone catches her and prevents her from interfering. She is left staring in surprise as the strike continues. Hyun-woo lowers his head and simply endures the attack. He says he is fine and tells Woo Man-hai there is no need for her to step in. She cannot understand how he can remain unharmed under such a blow. The blade stops against the dense energy wrapped around his body. AK Woong realizes Hyun-woo's protective energy has blocked the sword completely, and that Hyun-woo still refuses to retaliate because of Seji. At that moment, another voice rebukes AK Woong for attacking a guest. The AK clan head, AK Baiwan, arrives and scolds him for his uncontrollable temper. AK Woong immediately bows his head and apologizes. Woo Man-hai finally identifies the newcomer's true relation to Seji. Hyun-woo states plainly that the man before him is AK Seji's father, and repeats that Seji is dead. Baiwan absorbs the news in stunned silence. He admits that the truth is what he had feared all along. Even so, he composes himself and invites the visitors inside. Back at the inn, Jo Seol-yin worries that Hyung-woo and Hyung-pyo are taking too long. She keeps replaying the strange warmth and intimacy of Hyung-woo's touch before he left. She wonders what he meant by it, and cannot stop thinking about him. Her thoughts are cut off when someone suddenly finds her hiding place. Armed men discover that she is staying at the inn, and call it out. Jo Seol-yin realizes a fight has broken out below where her escorts should have been resting. Downstairs, one of the inn's men is cut down in a brutal attack. The surrounding escorts and patrons panic as the violence erupts. Bodies begin falling and the room descends into chaos. The surviving escorts curse the fact that yet another blade fight has found them before they could even rest. Jo Seol-yin takes command, ordering everyone inside and under control since Hyung-woo is absent. She realizes the attackers are not targeting them specifically, but their willingness to murder openly in a crowded inn is terrifying. She demands to know who these men are. The attackers answer by threatening both the Thunderclaps sect and the Tang clan for daring to oppose them. They reveal themselves as the Black Viper sect's Azure Moon Corps and boast that even the Tang clan now fears them. Jo Seol-yin recognizes them as the same Black Viper sect that had coveted the convoy's goods throughout the escort mission. The invaders sneer that they had offered surrender before, but now intend to kill those who sided with the Tang clan. They launch their assault without further warning. The narration explains that this kind of bloodshed had become common in Sichuan lately as the Black Viper sect grew unnaturally strong. That rising power was now colliding directly with the old giant of the region, the Tang clan, while swallowing weaker factions along the way. Faced with that new reality, Jo Seol-yin understands that survival now depends on staying out of the Black Viper sect's path whenever possible. A thug notices something unexpected and turns his attention toward it. He abruptly closes in before anyone can stop him. He corners a young woman at the inn and starts mocking her beauty in a place like this. His men assume he means to take her for himself now that their business here is done. The woman calmly orders him to move aside instead of showing fear. He takes her composure as a challenge and boasts that he will break her down and hand her over. To intimidate her further, he invokes the Black Viper sect and implies that catching their eye leads to ruin. He grabs at her, expecting easy control. For a brief instant, he still thinks he has the upper hand. She suddenly flips him past her with clean, practiced force. Before he can recover, she drives him down hard enough to make him spit blood. Shaken, he realizes the woman he treated like prey can actually fight. She meets his stare without flinching, confirming she is far more dangerous than he assumed. Now rattled, he demands to know who she really is. She identifies herself as Jo Seol-yin, eldest daughter of the Jo clan head. She adds the more important revelation that she currently leads the Hunan escort agency. The thug is stunned by the claim. His group laughs it off as impossible and answers her title with mocking sarcasm. Even so, their leader decides her status only makes her a more valuable target. Seol-yin reigns in her anger and judges that she cannot defeat this many enemies head-on. She quietly shifts her footing and prepares to escape instead of forcing a losing fight. Choosing survival, she commits to breaking through with everything she has. She bursts out and leaves the inn, forcing the men into pursuit. The thugs turn the chase into a game, taunting her as they run after her. While fleeing, Seol-yin desperately wonders whether she can lose them without being caught. Elsewhere, Dan Hyung-woo and his companions are invited into the AK clan estate. His group enters a formal gathering and waits to hear why they were summoned. The AK clan head, AK Baiwon, asks Hyung-woo's age because his dead son Seji would have been 20 this year. Hyung-woo confirms he is the same age, and the others are startled by how politely he answers. One companion is so thrown off by the age comparison and Hyung-woo's manners that he blurts out concern. Baiwon sets aside the awkwardness and asks the question that matters most to him. How did Seji die? The room grows heavy as everyone waits for Hyung-woo's answer. Hyung-woo begins by saying Seji was not just an ally but a true friend. He recalls Seji making a grim pact that any survivors must seek out the families of the dead. Hyung-woo had agreed then, though he did not understand why Seji spoke as if they might never return. Seji admitted he had a bad feeling that they would not meet again after the battle ahead. Hyung-woo had tried to reassure him and promised they would face the aftermath together. Seji then asked that, if he died, Hyung would tell his father about him. His final request was an apology to his father, and that was the last thing he said before dying. Returning to the present, Hyung-woo states plainly that AK Seji died saving his life. The confession hits the clan head hard enough to make him crush the table under his hand. Yet Baiwon takes pride in hearing that his son died protecting a friend rather than cursing the loss. He remembers Seji as the boy who once cheerfully left home, never to return. The memory confirms for him that that farewell truly became their last meeting. Hyung-woo reflects that Seji must have endured hardships much like his own, which makes the loss even sadder. Baiwon asks Hyung-woo's name directly, wanting to bind the story to the person before him. Hyung-woo gives his name without hesitation. Moved beyond restraint, Baiwon declares that from this day forward Hyung-woo is his son too and tells him to call him father. The others are stunned by how suddenly the clan head embraces him. His companions cannot believe the usually detached Hyung-woo is being drawn into this emotional scene so completely. The tension peaks as everyone waits to see how Hyung-woo will answer. He accepts the offer. For the first time, he calls Baiwon father. Baiwon breaks down in tears at hearing the word from Seji's friend. For Hyung-woo, the moment feels as if Seji is still standing beside him. Baiwan erupts in relieved laughter and praises Hyunwoo's nerve as worthy of Seji's companion. He immediately orders a proper celebration, saying he cannot remain seated now that his son has returned after 10 years. Servants bring out food and drink, and the gathering loosens under the clan head's command. As cups are raised, Hyunwoo's group finally begins hearing the AK clan estate's story in full. They learn that 10 years ago, when Seji disappeared, the AK clan was still an unremarkable martial family in Sichuan. After losing his son, Baiwan searched until despair consumed him, and during that period a martial master appeared and passed down Cheonji's arts. Baiwan threw himself into that training to survive his grief. That relentless effort is what built the AK clan estate's present reputation. But recently the Black Viper sect began swallowing up sects across Sichuan, and eventually forced the AK clan toward a decisive confrontation. Baiwan apologizes again for mistaking Hyunwoo's group earlier, explaining that the Black Viper sect has made everyone suspicious. Hyunwoo's companions realize this is the same sect that has been attacking them throughout their escort mission. Baiwan is still reeling from having gained a new son when the implications start connecting. Meanwhile, Hyunwoo samples the alcohol with detached curiosity, as if the danger outside can wait. At the same time, he judges that Ceilian's movement technique is faster than expected and begins reassessing her situation. He concludes that whether her title is genuine no longer matters, because no one else is going to save her. He calmly tells Baiwan he will be right back. Baiwan agrees without understanding where Hyunwoo intends to go. Hyunwoo sets down the drink and leaves at once. His companion notices too late that Hyunwoo has vanished from the table. Outside, the pursuers close the distance on Ceilian. They finally box her in from multiple sides. Ceilian realizes she can no longer outrun them. The men mock her title again now that she has nowhere left to flee. They order her to stop resisting and surrender herself. Faced with the end, Ceilian's thoughts sharpen. One attacker lunges in to seize her. Instead of taking her, he is jolted by a strange force running through her body. Ceilian is confused too, because she does not understand what power he is talking about. Then she remembers Hyunwoo once infused her with protective energy. Enraged and embarrassed, the thug draws his blade to finish her by force. His comrades tell him not to kill her yet because they still intend to abuse her first. Ceilian realizes her sword is gone, Hyunwoo's protective energy has faded, and her own strength is not enough to defeat them all. Rather than be captured and humiliated, she decides on death. As the enemy rushes in, he mistakes her resolve for helplessness and presses the attack. Ceilian silently apologizes to her father and brother for failing to avenge them. She asks their forgiveness for choosing such a desperate end. At the last possible instant, Hyunwoo arrives and declares that he is not too late. The attacker is stunned by the sudden intervention. Hyunwoo shatters the incoming blade with his bare hand. The thug can only gape at what just happened. A violent shockwave follows the break and throws the moment into chaos. The surrounding men lose sight of him in the smoke and turbulence. When the haze parts, Hyunwoo is already standing between Ceilian and the Black Viper sect. Ceilian can only stare as he places himself in front of her again. She admits to herself that her choice was reckless, but in the instant she thought she would die, the person she thought of was Hyunwoo. He calls her out for being ready to throw her life away. Then he dismisses the whole situation as a near miss that should never have happened. The enemy leader realizes the protective energy around Ceilian is gone, and she is exhausted, yet this one man has still ruined their certainty of victory. Hyunwoo ignores their panic and measures the field in silence. He tells Ceilian he understands why she made that choice. But he warns her never to do something like that again, and she obediently agrees. The Black Viper sect tries to recover its nerve by shouting its name and demanding fear. Instead, Ceilian sees a fury on Hyunwoo's face she has never witnessed before. He unleashes his sword energy across the ground toward the entire group. The attack races beneath them faster than they can react. The earth itself begins to split and surge under his power. The sect members panic as they realize the ground is turning against them. The first eruptions tear through their ranks and start killing them outright. More men are caught in the slaughter before they can even flee. Jagged stone spikes continue bursting upward in his wake. The survivors can only scream that the earth is writhing like a living thing and hunting them down. The rising mass gathers into a single monstrous form. The enemy can barely believe what they are seeing. A dragon-shaped body of earth rises from the ground under Hyunwoo's control. The earth dragon devours another victim as it surges through the battlefield. Ceilian recognizes the technique but can hardly say it aloud. Hyunwoo identifies it for her as an earth dragon. He explains that this is the second form of the tri-energy sword art. With the dragon towering behind them and enemies trapped in its body, he casually tells Ceilian they should return and finish their meal. Back at the estate, the long-delayed drinking table finally settles into place after the clash with the Black Viper sect. Baiwan and his people drink together in relief. As the mood warms, one absence becomes impossible to ignore. That missing person is Yunbaek, the meticulous steward who manages the AK clan estate's affairs. He cannot relax because Hyunwoo disappeared in the middle of the drinking party. Yunbaek worries that vanishing now, when the Black Viper sect could attack at any moment, may mean Hyunwoo has gone after the suspicious man they encountered earlier. Baiwan tells him not to worry, insisting that Hyunwoo is his son now. Yunbaek protests that the Black Viper sect will use any method necessary to achieve its goals. He fears they may have planted infiltrators specifically to exploit Baiwan's grief over Seji. The thought leads him to a worse conclusion. This may be the perfect moment for the Black Viper sect to strike the estate. His fear proves justified as hostile forces begin moving in. The White Moon Corps and Black Moon Corps of the Black Viper sect charge toward the AK clan estate. Their leader orders a full extermination of the AK clan estate that very night. Before they can advance, a voice cuts in and declares that the Black Viper sect will not be reaching the estate. The invaders demand to know who is speaking and where the challenge came from. A pillar of lightning crashes down from the sky in answer. The sect leader is horrified by the impossible sight. The thunder strike tears through the attackers and halts their advance. The survivors immediately realize the Black Moon Corps leader has arrived. Through the fading smoke, two figures emerge. Hyungwoo stands before them with Seal Yin behind him, sword in hand and energy coiling around the blade. He states that he will not let them ruin his father's good mood. With Seal Yin in tow, he advances alone toward the gathered enemy. Still trying to process everything, Seal Yin asks how he suddenly ended up with a father. Lightning continues to gather around them as the battle is about to begin. From the shadows, someone secretly watches the scene unfold. A guard near the AK clan's lights catches sight of Dan Hyungwoo and immediately realizes something monstrous has appeared. The intruder's overwhelming aura makes him seem less like a man and more like a demon. Hyungwoo's terrifying presence confirms the guard's fear beyond doubt. Panicked, the guard runs to warn the clan before it is too late. He bursts in with news that the Black Viper sect has launched a full assault with its Black Moon and White Moon Corps. The AK clan head realizes the enemy has chosen this day to force a final reckoning. The people gathered there are stunned by how suddenly the crisis has escalated. The clan head slams himself awake and clears the alcohol from his body by force. Now fully alert, he demands his sword and prepares to fight at once. An observer recognizes that he has instantly sobered himself to meet the emergency. Before he can move, another report stops him with the claim that the invaders have already been wiped out. The AK clan leaders struggle to understand how an attacking force could vanish so suddenly. The shaken guard insists he saw a demon-like figure burn the attackers to death. The clan head dismisses the story as drunken nonsense and turns his anger on the messenger. Desperate to be believed, the guard points toward the supposed demon and insists it truly appeared out of nowhere. The clan head, insulted by the accusation, threatens to show everyone what a real demon looks like. The guard frantically warns that the figure he means is standing directly behind the clan head. That warning finally makes the clan head turn. Dan Hyungwoo appears behind him and calmly announces his return to his father. Instead of welcoming him, his father immediately demands to know why the mission against the great heavenly sect ended in disaster. He confronts Dan Wool with the corpses and asks why the men he sent out are all dead. A subordinate reports that the dead men's last lead was a woman they followed to an inn in Chengdu, and Dan Wool orders her found no matter the cost. The report grows worse as the messenger admits the strike force sent to erase the AK clan estate has also been lost. The scale of the defeat is confirmed by the sight of the annihilated corpses. Dan Wool's expression hardens as the humiliation sinks in. In his fury, he unleashes power that tears through the surroundings. The force of his rage continues to rip apart the area around him. The destruction spreads, showing how close he is to losing control. Amid the wreckage, his men recover the bodies of the Azure Moon Corps as well. They prepare to return to headquarters with the dead, but there is still more bad news to deliver. Dan Wool decides to bring out the true heavenly lightning and crush the AK clan estate completely. By morning, the scene shifts to the inn, where a host thanks Seal Yin for staying the night and offers more rest because she is traveling with Hyungwoo. Seal Yin politely declines, and the group prepares to leave. Hyungwoo and Seal Yin move together with quiet familiarity. Watching them, Hyungwoo's fiancée grows irritated that his attention has been on Seal Yin since the night before. Her jealousy sharpens when another man casually calls her Hyungwoo's partner. She immediately demands to know what he just implied. The man innocently explains that he only meant partner, and reminds her that she is supposed to be Hyungwoo's betrothed. She pushes further by asking what he thinks Hyungwoo and Seal Yin look like together. His answer only worsens her mood, because he says they seem more like close siblings than lovers. That interpretation lets her decide to overlook what happened the previous day. Before the group can leave, Hyungwoo is called back. He is told that proper AK clan etiquette requires him to pay respects to the clan head first. The clan head is said to be at the training grounds, as he never misses his daily practice. At the training grounds, the clan head is already venting his grief through relentless sword drills. He reflects on the unbelievable report that Hyungwoo destroyed a Black Viper sect unit alone. When they meet, he asks Hyungwoo what kind of martial art could make that possible. Seal Yin answers honestly that the technique is the tri-energy sword art, said to descend from Cheonjija. The clan head is shocked by Cheonjija's name and asks whether that man is Hyungwoo's master. Hyungwoo explains that Cheonjija only taught the basics for 3 years and that he and the others had to complete the art themselves. Hyungwoo's fiancée realizes this connection explains why he became so absurdly strong. Hyungwoo then reveals that Cheonjija is not their master at all, but the enemy who dragged them into hell. The AK clan men are stunned to hear Cheonjija described that way. The clan head reveals that Cheonjija was also the enemy who abducted his son AK Seji and led him to his death, even while later giving the clan the martial art that revived it. His retainers begin to suspect that gift was no coincidence but a calculated arrangement, perhaps even compensation. The clan head bitterly wonders whether the martial art was meant as payment for his son's life. Even so, he admits he cannot discard a technique already embedded in him, while enemies still threaten the clan. He continues training with brutal intensity, trying to master grief through discipline. As he strikes the training post, he silently asks his dead son what he is supposed to do now. He notices Hyungwoo and the others watching him. Composing himself, he asks what brings them there so early. Hyungwoo answers simply that he has to leave. The clan head accepts that, guesses it concerns Seal Yin, and Hyungwoo confirms it does. Seeing his dead son's last friend before him, the clan head decides to treat Hyungwoo as a new son in his old age. He warns Hyungwoo that the Murim is not a place where strength alone solves everything and urges him to stay careful. He entrusts Seal Yin to Hyungwoo's care, and Hyungwoo answers him as a son would. With that bond formed, they part from the AK clan and return to their own group. Back at the inn, Seal Yin's people rush to her in relief, having feared the worst after the previous day. She apologizes for worrying them and immediately orders preparations to return to Hunan and rebuild the Hunan escort agency. Her men are moved by her safe return and renewed resolve. Escort Hyung pledges his help in rebuilding, and Seal Yin gratefully accepts it. Their plans are interrupted by the sound of someone rushing in with urgent news. Hyungwoo is told that the companions of the men from yesterday have surrounded the inn. The scale of the threat becomes clear when they learn more than 100 enemies are outside. The Black Viper sect's men fill the streets and close in with confidence. Seal Yin realizes the enemy has come specifically to find them. Hyungwoo confirms whether the attackers are from the Black Viper sect, and when she says yes, his mood turns cold. He welcomes the confirmation as exactly what he wanted. Since the Black Viper sect had targeted the AK clan, Hyungwoo decides this is the right moment to settle everything. He steps out onto the inn's upper level to face the siege alone. From above, he surveys the mass of Black Viper sect fighters below. Seeing them gathered together, he concludes the situation could not be more convenient. Below, the enemy leader urges his men to stop hesitating. Dan Wu orders them to slaughter everyone in the inn if necessary, so long as they capture Seal Yin and bring her to him. The men notice Hyungwoo on the railing and mock him as a frightened porter who looks ready to jump. Hyungwoo stands calmly above them, letting them underestimate him. Then he leaps down exactly as they mocked him for. The sect members are baffled that he would really throw himself into their midst. His landing detonates the ground with overwhelming force. The enemy leader's confidence falters as he senses something is wrong. A storm of lightning erupts from the impact point and engulfs the front ranks. The entire courtyard is swallowed by Hyungwoo's electrical power. The sect members can only stare in terror at the impossible sight. They realize too late that the lightning did not come from the sky but from Hyungwoo himself. Hyungwoo declares that the Black Viper sect will cease to exist from this day onward. He then wipes out every Black Viper sect member who came looking for him at the Hunan escort agency. Sometime later, the aftermath of the slaughter settles over the inn. As the survivors begin cleaning up bodies and preparing to return to Hunan, they are left wondering how many enemies died. Seal Yin feels guilty that Hyungwoo keeps having to handle disasters like this. Though Escort Hyung notes, he is already frighteningly efficient at it. Even so, she worries about him facing the entire Black Viper sect alone. Around them, the courtyard is littered with corpses from the battle he just finished. Escort Hyung reassures her that Hyungwoo will return without trouble because this is exactly the kind of thing he can handle. Elsewhere, the Black Viper sect decides to rely on the 3 true heavenly lightning devices it possesses to overcome its mounting crises. These weapons are revealed to be bombs made by the Thunderclap sect, far more versatile and destructive than ordinary Thunderclap bombs. Their power is so dangerous that even the Thunderclap sect once destroyed itself with the flames caused by its own creations. Armed with one of these bombs, the Black Viper sect leader vows to destroy both the AK clan estate and the Tang clan. His confidence is interrupted when a subordinate reports that Dan Wool is outside. The leader assumes Dan Wool has already captured Seal Yin and returned victorious. When the report hesitates, he demands an explanation. The answer comes in the form of a figure dragging a captive through the street toward them. That figure is Hyungwoo, and the man being dragged is Dan Wool himself. Hyungwoo arrives in complete control, without a trace of strain. Dan Wool, by contrast, is reduced to rage and humiliation. Hyungwoo confirms once more that this really is the Black Viper sect, while Dan Wool begs to be released. Hyungwoo ignores the plea and studies the sect's headquarters instead. He faces the sprawling stronghold with Dan Wool still in hand. Noticing the strange layout, he remarks that the entrance is unusual. Dan Wool explains that the true entrance lies beyond a maze of interconnected houses known only to the sect, but Hyungwoo cuts him off and says he has no need of guidance. Dan Wool tries to protest, but Hyungwoo has already decided on a simpler solution. The realization hits Dan Wool a moment too late. Hyungwoo kicks him away like a projectile. He follows with a sweeping strike that drives the body straight through the sect's outer structures. The impact tears a path across the compound and smashes through the supposed defenses. Walls and buildings explode apart under the force of the improvised assault. Dan Wool is hurled deeper inside as the maze is ripped open. The destruction leaves a direct line toward the heart of the headquarters. Hyungwoo blasts through the remaining barriers with raw power. He declares that if a path does not exist, he will simply make one himself. He charges through the opening and slams Dan Wool onward again. The body is swallowed by the storm of debris and force. Dan Wool crashes back down amid the shattered remains of the sect's defenses. He lies broken and barely conscious after being used as the battering ram. The sect's remaining fighters gather around their leader, shaken but still trying to form a defense. They cannot believe the layered stone maze, even reinforced with enchantments, was simply smashed apart. The sect leader tries to recover his authority by insisting that no one, however strong, can face the entire Black Viper sect alone. Hyunwoo answers by filling the ruined compound with another surge of sword, wind, and lightning. The sect leader reaches out in alarm as the pressure closes around him. Hyunwoo's attack engulfs him before he can react. The leader is torn apart by the storm of cutting force. In his final shock, he can only wonder whether this young man is some ancient master reborn in youth. The attack continues until nothing remains of his resistance. When the storm clears, the courtyard is left in ruins and the sect leader stands alone amid the wreckage. Hyunwoo advances through the destruction and asks if this man is the true leader of the Black Viper sect. Cornered, the leader admits it and decides to gamble everything on one true heavenly lightning bomb he had hoped not to use. He ignites the device in a last attempt to take Hyunwoo with him. He hurls the bomb while invoking the power of true heavenly lightning. Hyunwoo watches the attack descend without panic. For the first time, he shows a flicker of surprise at the weapon's nature. The bomb detonates in a massive blaze that engulfs the area around the sect. After controlling the blast enough to survive it, Hyunwoo acknowledges the bomb's power and notes that without limiting its radius, he would have been caught in the explosion as well. A Black Viper survivor laughs off any hope of survival, convinced even a martial god would die here. The answer comes coldly from within the flames, as Dan Hyunwoo asks whether the man has finished his last words. A blade of power cuts straight through the inferno instead of being consumed by it. Dan Hyunwoo emerges untouched and invokes Earth Dragon. His strike drives into the ground and turns the battlefield itself into a weapon. Jagged stone erupts in a rushing line toward the enemy. The Earth Surge races across the ruined sect grounds under Hyunwoo's control. A monstrous dragon-shaped force rises before the Black Viper survivor and swallows his escape. The man can do nothing but scream as the attack closes in. The Earth Dragon crushes through him and ends the fight. With that, the Black Viper sect disappears from the Jeonghu. Its destruction is credited to Dan Hyunwoo alone. The few who remain flee in terror, calling him a demon. They spread the story that a grey-robed monster devoured the Black Viper sect whole. Hyunwoo calmly takes possession of the sect's prize, a true heavenly lightning device. He shows no excitement, treating the treasure as just another object to be collected. His feet also leaves the Hunan escort agency holding two genuine true heavenly lightning devices. That gain becomes part of the legend growing around him. As the burning sect collapses behind them, survivor testimony begins to spread. One account after another insists that a single grey-robed man exterminated the Black Viper sect by himself. To many listeners, he sounds less like a man than a vengeful spirit. Within an hour, the rumor has swept across all of Sichuan. It soon reaches the Tang clan as well. The Tang elders are stunned that a force as powerful as the Black Viper sect could be wiped out in a single day. Tang Chansang, who had gone so far as to secure thunderclap bombs against them, realizes an unknown power has entered Sichuan. He orders a full investigation, fearing this new figure could become a threat to the region. A report follows that the Black Viper sect was not destroyed by a group at all, but by one person. The claim sounds absurd enough to provoke open anger and disbelief, but the messenger insists the survivors all confirm the same thing. Tang Hogwan accepts that the unbelievable report may in fact be true. He immediately asks whether this lone destroyer was wearing grey robes. The image of Hyunwoo holding the lightning device confirms the suspicion forming in his mind. The witness answers that the description is correct. Tang Chansang urgently asks his uncle whether he knows who this man is. Tang Hogwan then recounts everything he learned of Dan Hyunwoo's conduct during the escort mission. After hearing the full story, Tang Chansang decides such a man cannot simply be allowed to walk away. He resolves to seize Hyunwoo and make him part of the Tang clan, imagining Dragon and Phoenix united. Tang Hogwan repeats the phrase with interest, testing the thought behind it. Far away, Hyunwoo remains unaware that powerful people are already planning around him. The escort party regroups in the city, preparing to leave after the ordeal. Their companions and bystanders watch them with relief and curiosity. From above, others also take notice of the returning group. The young woman from the escort mission looks down with quiet interest. Hyunwoo remains composed, detached from the attention gathering around him. Elsewhere, news of the Black Viper sect's destruction reaches a far more sinister master. He is displeased because the sect had been one of his carefully cultivated tools. From his throne, he demands a full explanation of what happened. His subordinate reports that the sect was destroyed by a single man raised by Cheonjija. The revelation enrages him, because losing everything to one man is an insult he can barely accept. The subordinate hurriedly adds that they have already located the man, now working as a porter for the Hunan escort agency. The Dark Master reveals that he had armed the Black Viper sect with the Blood Moon sword art to help control Sichuan, and demands to know what else they had. He learns they also possessed 3 true heavenly lightning devices. That only deepens his disbelief that a mere porter could still have defeated them. The terrified subordinate can only beg forgiveness. The master orders the monster investigated at once and wonders whether Cheonjija truly created such a being. He vows that when the time comes, he will erase every trace Cheonjija left behind. And the first target in that purge will be the monster he created, Dan Hyunwoo. Meanwhile, after surviving the disaster, the Hunan escort agency finally begins the journey home. The treasured lightning device is raised in triumph as proof of what they gained. The others praise Hyunwoo for destroying the Black Viper sect alone and bringing back true heavenly lightning. Escort warrior Hyung is shocked to hear the device is the legendary weapon once tied to the destruction of the Thunderclap sect. Hyungwoo matter-of-factly explains that it seemed useful, so he brought it back. When the young woman starts playing with the dangerous device, escort warrior Hyung panics and tries to take charge of it. She gladly lets him keep it safe, and he eagerly accepts the responsibility. Since he alone understands what the device really is, the group decides escort warrior Hyung should hold it for now and use it later to help rebuild the agency. Just as the party settles into that decision, Hyungwoo senses someone approaching. Before they can depart, his attention shifts to a new interruption. The others notice it too and turn uneasy. A woman calls out and asks whether they are heading back to Hunan. She cheerfully says she was planning to go there as well and asks to join them. Escort warrior Hyung realizes she is the sort who will force her way into the journey if allowed, and suggests they simply travel together. Hyungwoo dryly notes that the group keeps growing, while she dismisses his complaint as bothersome. She says she looks forward to working with him, making her interest in him plain. Her sidelong glance shows that her playfulness is deliberate. The other young woman notices that attention and grows uneasy. Escort warrior Hyung can already tell the return trip is going to become complicated. Before the party can move on, another voice calls out to the Hunan escort agency. Two more figures approach from the road. Tang Hogwan himself arrives and stops them. The escort members are startled to see the elder appear in person. He politely asks for a favor. That favor is to let him and his companion travel with them to Hunan, since they also have business there. Escort warrior Hyung welcomes him at once, relieved by the added strength. Tang Hogwan then turns the conversation toward the young woman beside him. Back at the Tang clan, this meeting is already being framed as part of a larger design. Tang Chansang reflects that by now they should have joined the Hunan escort agency. He reminds himself that he has given Hyungwoo a chance and that the man's future choices will now decide everything. The companion is introduced as Tang Moon-young, daughter of Tang Chansang. Her arrival immediately adds another layer of rivalry and tension among the women around Hyungwoo. With yet another beauty joining them, the road to Hunan truly begins. The enlarged escort group sets out through the forest. Zhou Seolyan, master of the Hunan escort agency, feels a growing unease as the Tang clan's presence around them increases. That discomfort worsens because Tang Moon-young is no ordinary traveler, but the clan head's daughter and a famed beauty and martial talent. Seolyan can only watch the situation grow more difficult. And Wu Mun-hai, another renowned beauty and martial master, is traveling with them as well. Seolyan cannot understand why such extraordinary figures insist on staying with her battered escort company. She begins to suspect they are all here for the same reason. Wu Mun-hai's knowing smile confirms that suspicion. Both exceptional women have fixed their attention on Dan Hyungwoo alone. Hyungwoo himself continues forward as if none of it concerns him. The two women, and even Tang Hogwan, are all now watching him for what he might reveal. Tang Moon-young decides she must confirm for herself what is special about him. She approaches Hyungwoo and suggests that, since they are traveling together, they should properly introduce themselves. Wu Mun-hai immediately recognizes that Moon-young is making her move. Hyungwoo ignores the attempt and keeps walking, forcing Moon-young to protest. Wu Mun-hai finds his indifference amusing, while Seolyan awkwardly excuses him as someone unfamiliar with Murim manners. At last Hyungwoo responds directly and asks what she wants. Moon-young is caught off guard by how bluntly he cuts through pretense. Tang Hogwan answers for her and states the truth outright. They want heavenly lightning. Moon-young is alarmed that her granduncle would reveal their aim so openly. Seolyan had expected some hidden motive, but not such a direct demand. Even Wu Mun-hai and the escort members are taken aback by the sudden candor. In Murim, asking for another secret art is a serious taboo, especially for a Tang elder who knows better. Tang Hogwan smoothly shifts the conversation before the tension can explode, asking instead what Seolyan plans to do with the escort agency from here on. Seolyan answers with conviction that she intends to rebuild the Hunan escort agency. Tang Hogwan praises that resolve and immediately offers support by promising Tang clan business to the agency whenever they pass through Hunan. The offer is so generous that Seolyan can barely believe it. She realizes it is a tremendous opportunity, but also suspects such help must come with a price. Tang Hogwan confirms there is a condition. 1 or 2 Tang clan members will accompany the agency's escort missions until the clan obtains what it wants. Seolyan understands that what they truly seek is still Hyungwoo's heavenly lightning. Wu Mun-hai quietly notes the same conclusion. Hyungwoo, unconcerned with Murim taboos, simply says the arrangement is fine. He accepts on the agency's behalf without hesitation. Seolyan is startled both by his sudden smile and by the fact that he agreed to terms that should have been hers to decide. The narration clarifies that the heavenly lightning the Tang clan seeks is not actually the same as Hyungwoo's art. Hyungwoo's heavenly lightning is likened to lightning descending from the sky. The Tang clan's heavenly lightning, by contrast, is a legendary storm of countless hidden weapons raining down. That technique exists only as an old secret manual no one in the Tang clan has ever deciphered. Tang Hogwan has concluded that Dan Hyungwoo is the key to unlocking it. He quietly orders Moon-young to watch Hyungwoo closely, convinced the answer lies within his martial art. As evening falls, the group stops to camp for the night. Tang Hogwan chooses a simple way to probe Hyungwoo and asks him for a sparring match. Hyungwoo accepts at once, certain he will win. Tang Hogwan explains that the point is not to decide who is stronger, but to observe something deeper. Escort warrior Hyung hurriedly reminds Hyungwoo that sparring means defeating without killing, and Hyungwoo calmly assures him he already knows that. Hyung then remembers with dread that he once served as Hyungwoo's sparring partner himself. The two move to an open patch of ground while the others gather to watch. Tang Hogwan begins by readying hidden weapons and testing Hyungwoo's response. Hyungwoo answers by drawing up his lightning-charged blade without the slightest tension. Moon-young focuses intensely, determined to find the key to the form her clan seeks. Hyungwoo releases a stroke of heavenly lightning. The sky itself seems to split with blue-white force. The attack crashes down on Tang Hogwan before he can properly answer it. The onlookers are left speechless by the sheer scale of the strike. Tang Hogwan is blasted away in a single exchange. Moon-young rushes to her fallen granduncle in alarm. Hyungwoo casually says there is no need to worry because he restrained himself as much as possible. To Moon-young, that claim is even more shocking than the result. As she stares at the man who felled Tang Hogwan so easily, she can only wonder how anyone could possess such strength. That night, while one escort member sleeps soundly through the aftermath, the others are left to absorb just how terrifying Dan Hyungwoo truly is. In the aftermath of a brutal spar, Tang Moon-young kneels beside her collapsed granduncle, shaken by how completely he was overwhelmed. Unable to follow what happened, she panics for a moment but decides she cannot allow her clan to remain defenseless. Even with her granduncle injured beside her, she hardens her resolve to uncover the secret no matter the cost. That determination drives her toward Dan Hyungwoo in the middle of the night. Thinking of the Black Viper sect and the danger still hanging over her clan, Moon-young chooses pride and survival over hesitation. She boldly seeks Dan Hyungwoo out to ask for help. Their midnight meeting does not go unnoticed. Woo Mun-hai, who had only pretended to sleep nearby, secretly listens in. Jo Sil-yin is listening as well. Both women are startled by what Moon-young is about to ask at such an hour. They realize she has come with a serious request, not a casual visit. Moon-young nervously calls Dan Hyungwoo over and asks for a moment of his time. Throwing away her pride, she begs him to teach her heavenly lightning, and he agrees before she can even offer anything in return. His immediate acceptance leaves no room for bargaining. Moon-young is left stunned that he accepted so easily. To Dan Hyungwoo, the technique was never something to hoard for profit, and he simply tells her that if she wants to learn, he will teach. Woo Mun-hai is alarmed that he would reveal such a secret art so freely and warns that this is far too reckless. Dan answers that his offer is not limited to Moon-young alone, and anyone who wishes to learn may do so. That invitation immediately draws Jo Sil-yin in, and she asks to join as well. Dan openly extends the lesson to everyone present. He makes clear that what he is teaching is indeed heavenly lightning. With that, Dan Hyungwoo's heavenly lightning instruction begins. By day, the group gathers on the road and turns the journey itself into a training ground. Those who heard his promise all take him at his word and join the lesson. His teaching reaches beyond trained martial artists and includes even the porters. The breadth of his instruction shocks them, because he is teaching people who cannot even use inner energy. Dan begins with a demonstration and tells them to watch carefully. He shows heavenly lightning as nothing more than a simple downward sword stroke. Then he orders them to imitate it. The students are baffled that the legendary art seems to be only that one motion. Even Tang Hogwan can only conclude that Dan merely swung his sword straight down. Dan refuses to explain further and demands that they discover the answer themselves. So they all begin repeating the same downward strike in earnest. The training continues as the escort party keeps moving. Dan rejects their first attempts without hesitation. The students can no longer tell what they are doing wrong. Still, the Hunan escort agency presses on with the return journey while training continues alongside it. Whenever time allows, Dan stops them and makes them repeat the exercise again and again. He teaches no formulas, no breathing methods, and no circulation techniques, only the endless act of swinging downward. Many lose patience quickly, and Moon-young is among the first to waver. She cannot see what such a simple motion is supposed to teach. From the outside, it even seems as if Dan never intended to teach them anything at all. Moon-young bitterly regrets having pushed so hard to learn if this was all it would amount to. While she doubts him, the others who traveled with Dan begin to trust that the meaning must be hidden in the motion itself. They keep practicing instead of quitting. Woo Mun-hai is one of those who understands that Dan would not deceive them. Tang Hogwan also persists, convinced there must be truth in the repetition. Jo Sil-yin reaches the same conclusion and believes the entirety of heavenly lightning must be concealed within that single strike. As she adjusts her grip, she begins searching for the answer in the smallest details. Dan notices her change and realizes she is finally close to the real issue. When others try to interfere, Woo Mun-hai angrily drives them back so the moment is not ruined. Dan steps in behind Jo Sil-yin and physically guides her through the stroke. He directs her attention to the hand on the sword, where the nerves and force must sharpen to an extreme. Under his guidance, she finally senses the hidden principle. She realizes the sword's inner force must collide with the natural energy in the air. That collision creates the friction that gives birth to heavenly lightning. The onlookers are stunned as the truth begins to reveal itself. Tang Hogwan and the others immediately understand that Dan has exposed the core of the art. Moon-young blurts out the key insight as soon as she grasps it. Dan confirms the realization, though Jo Sil-yin admits she still cannot reproduce it alone. Woo Mun-hai, now desperate not to fall behind, demands to be taught the same revelation. Dan agrees and calls her forward as well. That sparks renewed eagerness in the rest of the group, who all ask for their turn. Even Moon-young, who had nearly given up, immediately wants back in. Dan refuses to indulge that wavering and declares that once someone gives up, their chance is over. Moon Young is stunned that he would reject her after agreeing so readily at the start. Before she can protest further, Tang Hogwan stops her. He tells her that if he can uncover the secret, he will make sure she is the one who inherits it, and asks her to trust him for now. Moon Young reluctantly yields to her granduncle's judgment. Training resumes, and Dan drives the group onward with the same relentless command to try again. After personally feeling the technique through Dan's guidance, Tang Hogwan finally catches a trace of the Tang clan's lost heavenly lightning. He immediately begins trying to connect that sensation to his own engulfing petal rain. Consumed by that possibility, he asks Dan for another spar. The others recognize that his obsession comes from a desire he cannot abandon. Dan, who is enjoying this exchange far more than he expected, accepts. Tang Hogwan leads him to a wider space so they can fight properly. For Dan, this kind of shared training and harmless sparring is a joy utterly different from the desperate swordsmanship of his past life. He relishes a battle where defeat does not mean death. Tang Hogwan proposes that he attack first and asks Dan to defend. Dan agrees with obvious anticipation. The spar begins at once. Tang Hogwan leaps up and unleashes engulfing petal rain, filling the sky with countless needles. The attack spreads into a dense storm charged with force. The needles descend from every direction like a killing rain. Dan watches calmly as the technique falls toward him. Tang Hogwan feels power gathering in the needles and wonders if he has finally succeeded. The spectators are awed by the speed and scale of his attack. Against an ordinary opponent, such a barrage would be impossible to survive. But to Dan Hyungwoo, the attack looks fundamentally flawed. He sees it as a powerless shower, all spread and no weight, like leaves drifting down. He raises his sword and meets the storm with effortless precision. Tang Hogwan is left reeling that Dan blocked the entire barrage so casually. Dan immediately asks why he threw the needles in such a wasteful way. Tang Hogwan cannot even understand the criticism. Dan answers by showing a far better method himself. He gathers the falling force into a single decisive line instead of scattering it. In that instant, his sword stroke becomes something far sharper than before. Tang Hogwan recognizes the sensation before the name is even spoken. Dan finally manifests true heavenly lightning. At that moment, Tang Hogwan's lifelong dream of seeing the real heavenly lightning is fulfilled. The force of Dan strikes tears through the field and leaves Tang Hogwan overwhelmed. Tang Hogwan can only beg to know how Dan accomplished it. Moon Young realizes that the true heavenly lightning her grandfather sought so desperately is unfolding in Dan's hands. She is left wondering what kind of person he truly is. After 3 days of repeating this training day and night, the group finally resumes the journey in earnest. Dan Hyungwoo and his companions continue their escort mission toward home. At last, they arrive back in Shuzhou. From the heights, they look down on the city they had hoped to return to safely. Zhou Seolyin quietly acknowledges that they have finally come back. But the sight before them crushes that relief, because the place has been reduced to ruins. Not a single building of the Hunan escort agency remains intact, and rebuilding will have to begin from nothing. Seeing the devastation, someone asks Zhou Seolyin whether she still intends to visit the Zhou clan estate. She admits she cannot bring herself to go there yet. The Zhou clan estate has already been completely erased by the blood demon being. Because it held all the memories of the family she loved, Seolyin is not ready to face its loss directly. The others understand her grief, but they also know they cannot maintain 2 ruined homes at once. To rebuild the Hunan escort agency, a practical decision has to be made, and they suggest restoring the Zhou clan estate instead. That proposal catches Seolyin completely off guard. Tang Hogwan offers to buy the estate himself, explaining that he had already planned to establish a Tang clan branch in Shuzhou. He promises to place Moon Young in charge of it and tells Seolyin she may visit whenever she wishes, so the place can remain tied to her cherished memories. Seolyin gratefully accepts the offer, and the others see that it will ease her heart while preventing future complications. Tang Hogwan also recognizes the arrangement benefits the Tang clan, because it gives them reason to remain close to Dan until heavenly lightning is perfected. Wu Munhai immediately commits her clan as well, offering to stay and supply the materials needed to rebuild the Hunan escort agency. Dan silently takes in how quickly everyone has chosen to stand with him. Wu Munhai openly flaunts the wealth and reach of the Wu Mun clan, making it clear their support is no empty boast. Dan understands that she intends to stay until the rebuilding is done, and she frankly admits the Wu Mun clan never makes a losing deal. With the major decisions settled, the escort agency members eagerly move to begin clearing the wreckage. Zhou Seolyin tries to dismiss them with payment, saying they are free to leave once the agency is restored enough to stand on its own. Instead, the men declare that the Hunan escort agency matters to them too and ask to remain as part of it. They admit they have nowhere else to go, but their loyalty is sincere. Seolyin accepts them warmly and welcomes them to stay. With everyone's will and support finally aligned, the rebuilding truly begins. The men throw themselves into the work, calling out to one another as they clear the ruins. The wreckage starts to move under many hands working together. The Hunan escort agency, which had nearly vanished into Jianghu's darkness, begins to rise again. At the center of that revival stands Dan Hyungwoo, carrying a potential far greater than anyone yet understands. Elsewhere, amid a burning estate, a red-haired warrior coldly offers a mocking apology. He addresses the Wa clan head as though praising his efforts, while standing over the clan's destruction. Around him, masked killers finish slaughtering the defenders. The Wa clan estate is consumed by flames and corpses. The dying clan head demands to know why this is happening after they surrendered both the thunderclap bombs and the true heavenly lightning. The attacker answers that the order came from his lord to wipe out the Wa clan estate entirely. He explains the purpose plainly. No one must be left alive to possess thunderclap bombs any longer. Realizing he has been betrayed, the clan head curses them and lunges in fury. His last desperate attack is crushed immediately. The red-haired warrior declares the extermination complete and orders the return to their lord. The killers march away, leaving only bodies and fire behind them. Before the end, one last thunderclap bomb is set in motion amid the flames. The estate erupts in a final explosion that erases what little remained. And so, after the thunderclap sect was erased despite once ruling Jianghu through its bombs, the Wa clan estate too is wiped from history. The story opens at the Murim Alliance, where a crisis is already spreading through the martial world. Alliance leader Dako Woon receives word that after the Zhou clan was destroyed, the Wa clan, heirs to the thunderclap sect, has also been wiped out. The gathered leaders immediately fear the killers have seized the thunderclap bombs and urge the alliance to prepare for disaster. As rumors and reports pile up across Jianghu, the alliance's elders can only watch the situation grow darker. The Murim alliance becomes overwhelmed trying to uncover who is behind the string of massacres. Dako Woon warns that if those weapons are used maliciously, the entire Murim could be thrown into calamity. He is left demanding answers about both the identity of the culprits and the purpose behind the case. Elsewhere, someone listening to this confusion finds the uncertainty amusing. In a hidden lair, a sinister master praises a subordinate for flawlessly destroying the Wa clan estate. The subordinate kneels and accepts the praise without hesitation. The master then turns to another matter and asks what should be done with a porter connected to the Hunan escort agency. Rather than focus on that lone survivor, he asks after Demon Shadow instead. He learns Demon Shadow is still idling away in Hunan, and his subordinate offers to send him to Xuchang. The master decides Demon Shadow and his squad should be enough to deal with the monster created by Cheongga. He confidently entrusts that threat to them and moves on with his larger plans. While Jianghu shifts toward chaos, life in Hunan appears to continue, and the new Hunan escort agency is built without trouble. Inside the agency, someone arrives in haste with urgent news. A young escort rushes in to report to the agency's young lady. She calmly asks what has happened. He excitedly announces that the agency has finally received a new escort request. Relieved, she immediately asks for the details. The request is to escort the daughter of GM Jahang, but the messenger warns that one part of it is highly unusual. The unusual part is not the destination, but the person who agreed to travel with her. That companion turns out to be the legendary Sword King. The young lady is stunned that such a figure would be involved. Dan Hyunwoo, who has been listening quietly, turns his attention fully to the matter. With that revelation, Hyunwoo's second escort mission begins. The agency formally reviews the request and its hidden implications. They learn that the wealthy martial merchant GM Jahang wants his daughter GM Yuhua escorted safely to Suzhou in Jiangsu. The young lady presses for the real reason behind such a dangerous request. Her subordinate confirms they have already investigated the background. He explains that GM Jahang recently joined the merchant group known as the Golden Alliance. But because the unorthodox alliance has been pressuring him, they suspect his wealth and Golden Alliance ties are the true target. The escort agency realizes GM Jahang intends to use his own daughter as bait to draw the enemy out. The plan is part of a larger conflict between merchant powers, with the unorthodox alliance expected to strike the convoy while the Golden Alliance attacks elsewhere. The young lady is horrified that GM Yuhua would be placed in such danger. The answer is that the Sword King's presence is meant to make that risk acceptable. Because GM Yuhua is engaged to the Golden Alliance's future leader, they have hired one of the 10 greatest masters to ensure her safety. The Sword King's role is to guarantee she remains completely unharmed even while serving as bait. Even so, the young lady hesitates over whether their small agency can accept a mission that may force them to confront the unorthodox alliance. Her subordinate admits it would be impossible for them alone, so the decision is placed before Hyunwoo. Hyunwoo silently considers the request instead of answering immediately. Soon after, the escort carriage is already on the road, showing that the mission has been accepted. One of the escorts, Zhongchil, can barely contain his excitement at finally being chosen for a real mission. He proudly celebrates becoming an escort warrior at last and imagines it as recognition for his past efforts and martial ability. Yet his joy is mixed with unease as the journey begins. What unsettles him most is that Hyunwoo has looked displeased ever since the mission started. Zhongchil first assumes Hyunwoo is upset that he became an escort warrior first, but quickly dismisses that as too petty for him. Instead, Zhongchil worries he may have offended someone without realizing it. Inside the carriage, another powerful presence quietly waits. The Sword King rides with the group, calm and imposing despite the danger surrounding the mission. His identity is confirmed as Yong Kyilgun, the Sword King. The protected passenger, GM Yuhua, sits beside him under a bridal-style veil. Yuhua is startled that the famous Sword King, who should be over 80, looks decades younger than expected. The Sword King notices her anxiety and reassures her that he will protect her no matter what. She gratefully accepts his promise. Even while reassuring her, the Sword King begins assessing the escorts around him. Among the escorts ahead, he senses only one person with truly strong energy. Meanwhile, Hyunwoo's patience finally runs out for a far less dramatic reason. Zhongchil braces himself, expecting trouble. Instead of confronting anyone, Hyunwoo simply leaps onto the roof of the moving carriage. He plants himself there as if that had been his intention all along. Jongchul calls after him, but Hyunwoo ignores the confusion below. It turns out Hyunwoo was not troubled by enemies or the Sword King at all, but merely by the discomfort of riding inside the carriage. The Sword King finds Hyunwoo's behavior amusing rather than offensive. He then warns Yuhua that the unorthodox alliance is already moving. His warning proves true as masked attackers descend on the carriage from all sides. One of the raiders spots the target and signals the others. They are ordered to strike the carriage immediately. The attackers rush Hyunwoo first, assuming the escort on the roof is the obstacle in their way. Jongchul panics and shouts that enemies are coming from behind. Inside the carriage, the Sword King calmly reaches for his weapon. His killing intent alone begins to split the air around the carriage. Hyunwoo remains composed, already reading the situation. The Sword King tells Yuhua to stay calm because he will end the attack quickly. He launches himself out to meet the ambushers. The raiders are stunned when the white-robed master appears among them in an instant. They try to regroup and focus all attacks on him. The Sword King dismisses them as noisy and begins cutting them down. His blade passes through the first wave before they can even react. More attackers die in the same instant, unable to understand what struck them. Blood fills the air as the ambush collapses almost immediately. The Sword King's sword art expands into a terrifying field that overwhelms everyone around him. He lands lightly as though the slaughter required no effort at all. Without breaking rhythm, he draws deeper on his technique. The surviving attackers find themselves trapped within a web of sword light they cannot escape. The Sword King deliberately displays his art, reasoning that any true martial artist watching would be unable to look away. He silently asks whether the hidden observer has learned anything from witnessing it. But when he looks for that observer, he realizes the one he sensed is no longer there. Rather than anger, this only deepens his curiosity about the mysterious man who ignored even such a sword display. Back at the carriage, Jongchul nervously asks about the attackers from the rear. Hyunwoo tells him they have already been handled, not by him, but by the Sword King. The Sword King orders the convoy to keep moving while he remains above as their shield. The defeated raiders are left sprawled behind as the carriage continues on. Far away, the unorthodox alliance receives news of the failure. Their leader erupts in fury that his men could not even seize a single woman. He is even more enraged that the entire strike force was annihilated. Unorthodox alliance leader Gal Chionike declares that after previous failures, this time they must succeed at any cost. He acknowledges that GM Jahang has hired a formidable master, but insists no mercenary bought with money can truly stand against him. He vows to crush the Golden Alliance's side personally. That night, the convoy's horse is led into an inn as the travelers stop to rest. The group settles into a quiet lodging house for the evening. At dinner, the innkeeper keeps bringing dish after dish, astonished by how much the four guests are ordering. Even the Sword King is taken aback by the amount of food on the table and realizes one person is responsible for most of it. Hyunwoo cheerfully admits that he simply likes to eat. Jongchul laughs awkwardly, trying to make light of Hyunwoo's appetite. Before long, empty bowls begin piling up at an absurd pace. Jongchul can only stare as Hyunwoo devours the meal faster than seems possible. Desperate not to be left behind, Jongchul tries to snatch at least a few bites for himself. But he suddenly notices something strange about the food. He realizes the dishes feel unnaturally light, as if something essential is missing from them. Hyunwoo dismisses the concern and keeps eating, insisting food is for eating, not analyzing, while Jongchul accuses him of stealing everything. Yuhua watches in amazement, unable to believe Hyunwoo finished so much before the others had even begun properly. As she studies him more closely, she wonders why the Sword King seems interested in a man who appears ordinary aside from his appetite. Hyunwoo only smiles, giving away nothing. That makes Yuhua even more curious about what the Sword King sees in him. Night deepens over the inn while hidden enemies prepare their next move. Hyunwoo finishes the meal satisfied, while the others are left with almost nothing. Jongchul explodes in frustration, only to learn the kitchen has run out of ingredients entirely. Trying to help, Yuhua offers alcohol instead if anyone is still hungry. The offer immediately catches the Sword King's attention. Though he had declined before, he instantly volunteers to drink any leftover alcohol. Jongchul is left trembling with hunger and disbelief that the masters around him can consume so much while he has not even had water. Hyunwoo's expression sharpens as he quietly pieces something together. The Sword King also narrows his eyes, sensing the same hidden problem. Elsewhere in the inn, one of the staff is praised by a hidden accomplice for carrying out his role well. The infiltrators reveal they spared the innkeeper's family because he cooperated with their scheme. Their leader, Chai Horyang, explains that even the Sword King cannot resist the energy-dispersing poison mixed into the meal. He expects the poison to soon scatter all of the Sword King's inner energy. Once that happens, the unorthodox alliance plans to launch a surprise attack while everyone sleeps. Back with the escorts, Jongchul keeps grumbling about going to bed hungry because Hyunwoo ate everything. Hyunwoo abruptly tells him he should not have eaten the food at all. Jongchul is baffled by the warning. Even as sleep overtakes him, he absurdly interprets Hyunwoo's words as a complaint about fairness rather than danger. After Jongchul falls asleep, Hyunwoo finally acts. He gathers his energy in silence, no longer hiding his awareness. Using his cultivation, Hyunwoo expels the energy-dispersing poison from his body before it can affect him. At that same moment, the unorthodox alliance begins its night assault on the inn. One of the infiltrators slips into Yua's room while she lies asleep and defenseless. He admires her beauty, but reminds himself she is valuable merchandise that must not be damaged. His restraint quickly gives way to lust as he convinces himself a little violation would not matter if it left no marks. Before he can touch her, a killing presence crashes down on him. The Sword King cuts him apart in a single stroke. Realizing the poison failed, the Sword King coldly concludes that these intruders are the ones who ruined his drink. The remaining attacker can only stare in disbelief that the Sword King is still fully active. The Sword King answers with another devastating cross-shaped slash. He stands amid the wreckage with his great sword drawn, completely unshaken by the poison or the ambush. After securing Yua's room, he turns away, satisfied that she remains unharmed. He notes with relief that he arrived before she woke, preserving both her safety and her ignorance of the danger. A hidden observer wonders whether the people caught in this conflict can even save themselves. A surge of ominous power breaks the stillness and signals that danger is already closing in. Morning arrives, briefly masking the violence of the night before. The porter wakes up cheerfully, unaware that the situation around him has completely changed. His good mood falters as he senses something is wrong. He finds Hyunwoo standing over a room full of corpses, and is stunned by what happened while he slept. Hyunwoo answers with unsettling calm, treating the massacre as routine and ordering the porter to clean up. The porter obeys, but privately realizes Hyunwoo's casual attitude is far more frightening than the bodies. He is left wondering what kind of nightmare unfolded during the night. The two set out together, with Hyunwoo remaining composed and unreadable. Elsewhere, the Sword King escorts Yua while staying alert for pursuit. Seeing how many enemies were subdued in one night, the Sword King admits Hyunwoo is more capable than he first believed. Even so, the journey continues because there is no time to linger. They travel by carriage, trying to put distance between themselves and the threat. At the same time, a red-clad commander orders his men to report to the alliance leader. Jin Chanhik, the Black Blood Swordsman and vice leader of the Unorthodox Alliance, decides to intervene personally because their target is the Sword King. He dispatches his scouts and sets the hunt in motion with confidence. His forces descend on the village where the carriage has arrived, sealing off every route. Hyunwoo senses the disturbance before anyone else and grows serious. An unnatural silence hangs over the village, as if the place has already been emptied for slaughter. The porter notices the deserted streets and begins to fear an ambush. Yua also feels that something is deeply wrong as no civilians appear anywhere. The empty village confirms that the enemy has prepared the ground in advance. A hidden villager peeks out in terror, showing the locals are alive but too frightened to intervene. The tension spikes as movement spreads through the buildings around them. Hyunwoo concludes that the fear gripping the village comes from overwhelming killing intent. The carriage stops, forcing everyone to face the trap head-on. They arrive at the Lunar Flower Pavilion, where the ambush is ready to spring. The Sword King and Yua brace themselves as the threat closes in. Hyunwoo steps down first, moving to confront whatever is waiting outside. The porter rushes after him, unwilling to leave him alone. He reports that the inn and the entire village are empty, confirming the enemy has cleared the area. The Sword King realizes the Unorthodox Alliance intends to settle everything here and now. Yua suddenly feels a sinister pressure so intense that it seems to press on her body. Hyunwoo identifies it plainly as bloodlust. He explains that the killing intent is so vast it has changed the very atmosphere of the village. Even those with little martial training can feel the murderous pressure surrounding them. That means the source must be someone terrifyingly powerful. The enemy finally reveals itself, and the Sword King is named as the target. Jin Chanhik mocks the Sword King for moving over a reward and boasts that even he cannot withstand hundreds of alliance fighters. Yua fears the worst, but the Sword King tells her not to panic. He draws his sword and prepares to defend her personally. Hyunwoo reminds the porter of the promise he made. The Sword King reaffirms that he will protect Yua no matter what. Jin Chanhik orders a full assault, convinced sheer numbers will decide the battle. The first wave surges forward without hesitation. More masked fighters pour in from every direction to overwhelm the defenders. The Sword King answers with a single blazing slash. The attackers realize too late that they have charged into a killing zone. His sword light tears across the battlefield with crushing speed. The front ranks are cut down instantly before they can even strike. The slash keeps traveling, mowing through multiple enemies at once. The Sword King advances through the chaos like a storm, refusing to yield ground. He ridicules the alliance for bringing such a force just to seize one woman. Jin Chanhik boasts that 90% of the Unorthodox Alliance's strength is here and orders everyone to attack together. The Sword King is quickly surrounded from the rooftops and the streets alike. Seeing the endless stream of enemies, the porter finally understands just how desperate the trap is, and Yua is horrified that so much force was mobilized for her. The Sword King tells them to survive on their own because he cannot protect everyone while fighting this many foes. The porter steels himself, realizing he may have to endure without help. Even so, he begs the Sword King not to die. The Sword King finds the plea absurdly earnest, yet it amuses him. He unleashes more of his true power and declares he will show why he is called the Sword King. His killing intent sharpens as he commits fully to the battle. Blue sword energy erupts across the village, turning the battlefield into a sea of light. His attacks multiply into a web of lethal arcs that fill the air. Enemies are carved apart from every angle as he cuts through the encirclement. Yua watches in awe as the Sword King's full strength finally reveals itself. To break the enemy's morale, He chooses the most overwhelming method possible and fights at maximum power from the start. But the Alliance's numbers are so vast that even fear alone cannot stop them from pressing forward. After hours of fighting at full strength, the Sword King's body begins to fail, and he nears his limit. He realizes one more great attack could push him into energy deviation, yet the enemies still crowd around Jiamyua. As he tries to stabilize his circulation, Jin Chanhik seizes the opening and attacks at once. The vice leader rushes in personally, sensing the Sword King is finally vulnerable. The Sword King blocks and counters, but the clash shows how close he is to collapse. He throws Jin Chanhik back with a desperate burst of force. The effort tears at his body and leaves him visibly in pain. Jin Chanhik crashes down but immediately rises to continue the kill. He leaps again for a finishing blow, convinced the Sword King is done. He declares the Sword King's end as he descends. The Sword King apologizes to Jiamyua because he believes he can no longer protect her. Instead of blaming him, she thanks him sincerely for everything he has done. Her gratitude only deepens his regret, and he laments that he may never see his granddaughter again. At that critical instant, a bolt of power unlike ordinary lightning tears through the sky. The strike crashes down between the attackers and their prey, interrupting the execution. The battlefield is swallowed by blinding thunder. The Sword King and Jiamyua stare upward in disbelief as the heavens themselves seem to intervene. The source of the lightning is revealed to be Hyunwoo, standing calmly amid the storm. He appears without strain, as if this impossible display costs him nothing. The porter instantly regains confidence and boasts that Hyunwoo's lightning technique cannot be beaten. Jiamyua repeats the name in confusion, trying to understand what she just witnessed. Hyunwoo explains that the technique is called Heavenly Lightning. The Alliance fighters panic when they realize their vice leader has been reduced to ashes in a single instant. The porter calls Jiamyua over to safety while Hyunwoo stands between them and the enemy. To her, Hyunwoo no longer looks like a mere escort worker but like a martial master beyond reason. When the Sword King reaches toward him, Hyunwoo warns him not to touch because his unstable energy could still trigger deviation. Even so, Hyunwoo places a hand on him and channels the lightning with precise control. The Sword King is shocked to find his blood energy settling and the deviation receding instead of worsening. Hyunwoo tells him to rest because the battle is effectively over. The Sword King, now certain this young man is the true savior, demands to know who he really is. Hyunwoo answers as if nothing extraordinary happened, calling himself only a porter from the Hunan escort agency. The Sword King cannot reconcile that humble title with the power he just saw. The remaining Alliance fighters try to rally themselves, insisting they still hold the advantage if they kill Hyunwoo. They charge again in a final desperate wave, but even the Sword King can only watch in stunned silence. Against Hyunwoo, numbers mean nothing at all. He raises his sword through the storm with complete confidence. The sky answers him, gathering vast chains of lightning above the village. The storm thickens until the heavens themselves seem to bend to his will. Then the lightning descends in repeated strikes across the battlefield. By the next morning, the Namgung clan arrives after hearing what happened. Because the village fell under their sphere of influence, they come expecting to assess the damage and respond. But the moment Namgung Han sees the aftermath, he is horrified into stillness. The streets are filled with corpses staring upward, and the scene makes clear that the unorthodox alliance has been utterly broken. A subordinate reports that the Sword King has been found alive. Namgung Han orders the bodies handled and goes to see the Sword King first. Inside, the Sword King is already recovering through disciplined energy circulation. The lingering lightning around him shows how unusual the healing process still is. He notes that among the dead were many unfamiliar faces, proof that the alliance committed nearly everything to the operation. Namgung Han formally greets him and asks after his condition. Jiamyua explains that while the Sword King was recovering, Namgung Han even brought a physician out of respect. The Sword King recognizes Namgung Han as Namgung Hak's grandson and asks after the old man. Namgung Han says his grandfather is still vigorous, then praises the Sword King for wiping out the alliance's forces. The Sword King gives a vague answer, clearly uncomfortable taking full credit. Hyunwoo's earlier claim to be only a porter echoes in his mind, making the truth harder to explain. He cannot forget the sight of Hyunwoo standing alone beneath the lightning. At last he asks directly whether the man who saved him with lightning is really just a lowly porter. The question leaves Namgung Han baffled because he has no idea what the Sword King is talking about. He slowly realizes that the Sword King has mistaken the true destroyer of the alliance. Hyunwoo clarifies that what he used was not ordinary lightning but heavenly lightning. Namgung Han bristles at Hyunwoo's casual tone toward the Sword King and starts to object. The Sword King stops him immediately, refusing to let anyone make an issue of it. Instead, he asks Hyunwoo one question that matters to him personally. Jiamyua and the porter tense up, unsure where this is going. Namgung Han senses the conversation has taken a strange turn and stays silent. The Sword King abruptly asks whether Hyunwoo would be interested in meeting his granddaughter. The request is so unexpected that everyone freezes in disbelief. Hyunwoo rejects the idea without hesitation. Even the horse seems to pause at the awkward silence that follows. Namgung Han quickly decides to withdraw now that he has confirmed the Sword King is safe. The Sword King sends greetings to Namgung Hak, while Namgung Han begins to promise support if the alliance attacks again. Hyunwoo cuts him off, saying there is no need to worry because the alliance's main forces were already destroyed the previous night. The Sword King adds that the Golden Alliance has likely already moved to exploit that collapse. From the carriage, Jiamyua quietly watches, now fully aware of who Hyungwoo really is. She apologizes inwardly for having misjudged him before. As Young Pyo and Jo Seol-yin had planned, the Sword King and Jiamyua had served as bait for a larger operation. While the Sword King held off the Alliance's assault, the Golden Alliance launched a full-scale strike on the unorthodox Alliance headquarters. Their leader fled badly wounded, and the Golden Alliance won the war. The Sword King decides that, in the end, survival is enough and accepts the outcome with rough satisfaction. The porter is baffled when the Sword King suddenly chooses to stay close to him. The Sword King settles in beside him anyway and pointedly asks whether the porter objects. Hyungwoo notes dryly that surviving the ordeal seems to have made the Sword King far more talkative than before. The Sword King is baffled when Dan Hyungwoo suddenly starts treating him with formal respect. Jongchil can only conclude that both of them have become equally strange. The Sword King cuts off the nonsense and forces Jongchil to get moving with a smack. Jongchil immediately gives in and hurries to obey. The escort resumes at speed as the group presses onward. With the unorthodox alliance defeated, the journey continues while the Sword King keeps pestering Dan to meet his granddaughter. Along the way, the Sword King starts treating Jongchil and Dan like his own grandchildren. Dan, in turn, accepts him as an elder and begins speaking to him with proper honorifics. Jongchil jokes that he pities Dan, thinking the old man means the awkward new respect between them. Instead, the Sword King says his concern is about the sword technique he taught Dan. Jongchil is confused and asks what that is supposed to mean. To explain, the story goes back to the first day of the escort mission. At that time, Jongchil was obsessively training every day to master Heavenly Lightning. The Sword King happened to witness that training and judged Heavenly Lightning to be full of wasteful movements. Unable to ignore it, he passed a few of his own sword techniques on to Jongchil. Those lessons kept Jongchil alive, but they also made Dan stop going easy on his sword training from then on. Now the Sword King admits he was wrong, because the excess he saw was actually essential to the true path of Heavenly Lightning. He explains that the technique works by cutting through the gaps between energies rather than creating lightning through direct collision. For a lifelong swordsman, discovering such a new path of the sword in old age leaves him grateful to Dan. Dan simply acknowledges the thanks without making much of it. The Sword King then warns that, for Jongchil, it may already be too late. Dan quietly listens as Jongchil tries to understand the warning. Jongchil protests that he already used the Sword King's efficient technique successfully in real combat. That success is exactly the problem, because Heavenly Lightning only emerges through an intentionally inefficient sword path. Now that Jongchil has trained his body and instincts to favor efficiency, his subconscious will reject Heavenly Lightning's flawed path. The realization devastates Jongchil, who had endured brutal training while dreaming of using Heavenly Lightning. He panics at the thought that he may never be able to learn the technique he wanted most. Before the matter can settle, something unexpected interrupts the conversation. A strange sound announces an incoming attack. Jongchil cries out as danger suddenly closes in. A violent purple sword wind tears toward the carriage while Dan remains standing above it. The attack sweeps past the Sword King as dark energy floods the area. Its owner reveals himself with a predatory grin and murderous intent. Dan turns to face the new threat without panic. The carriage surges forward as the ambush throws the escort into alarm. The attacker fully emerges, radiating sinister power and clearly targeting the group. He calls it a stroke of luck that following the Hunan escort agency also led him to the Sword King. The Sword King studies him and realizes he belongs to either of the enemies they recently fought. The intruder demands to know which of them is Dan Hyungwoo and declares he will kill that porter first before enjoying a fight with the Sword King. More masked followers appear behind him, revealing that he did not come alone. It is revealed that Demon Shadow and the Demon Shadow Squad, sent by the Blood Demon being, have finally tracked Dan down. Elsewhere, the Blood Demon faction had already been checking on Demon Shadow's mission. They expected Demon Shadow to have encountered the porter because he led the squad personally. A recent report had also confirmed that the porter and the Sword King were traveling together. The Blood Demon being remarks that the Sword King's habit of meddling has surfaced again. His subordinate reassures him by reporting that Demon Shadow recently reached the 9th stage of the Blood Demon sword art. That news excites the Blood Demon being, who sees Demon Shadow as a rare genius and looks forward to the result. They become convinced that neither Dan nor even the Sword King will be able to stop Demon Shadow. Back at the ambush, Demon Shadow repeats his demand for Dan's identity and his threat to kill him first. His masked squad closes in to support him. Dan remains calm and unreadable in the face of the threat. The Sword King questions why Dan is stepping forward when the enemy clearly came for him. Demon Shadow grows furious that anyone would ignore a direct question from a disciple of the Blood Demon being. He lashes out and demands an answer immediately. The woman inside the carriage notices the danger and looks out in alarm. The Sword King realizes too late that the attack is actually aimed at the carriage. A destructive strike crashes toward the passengers. The woman screams as the blow reaches the carriage. Demon Shadow praises the Sword King for dispersing his sword wind so easily. The Sword King replies that he did not stop it at all. Demon Shadow is thrown off by that answer. The Sword King tells him that by targeting the carriage he has made a far more frightening man angry. Dan steps in front of the carriage, and even the woman inside realizes the attacker has provoked the wrong person. Dan gives a simple warning that they are on an escort mission and the carriage is not to be touched. Demon Shadow mocks the idea that this young porter could be more terrifying than the Sword King. Dan answers with a flat promise to kill him. For the first time, Demon Shadow senses Dan's hidden power, and is shaken that such inner energy had been concealed until now. The Sword King dryly notes that someone strong enough to hide their energy perfectly is truly frightening, and Zhongqiu can only agree. Demon Shadow finally identifies Dan as the man he was sent to find. Dan asks whether the assassin knows him. Demon Shadow cannot understand why this porter reminds him of his own lord, and the resemblance only enrages him further. He swears to make Dan die painfully, and unleashes the Blood Demon sword art at full force. Even his own squad is startled that he is using the Blood Demon sword art from the very start. He forms a blazing blood-red attack called Blood Fire and hurls it at Dan. Dan faces the incoming technique without losing his composure. Watching from the carriage, Zhongqiu realizes the heat and pressure are so overwhelming that he doubts he could block it even at full strength. Dan moves straight into the attack instead of retreating. A brief clash of expressions shows Dan's confidence against Demon Shadow's growing unease. The force of their exchange shakes the carriage and scatters blood-red energy through the air. Dan bursts through the attack in a flash of speed. He cuts across the battlefield so fast that Demon Shadow is left bleeding before he can react. Demon Shadow, wounded but exhilarated, admits Dan is no ordinary opponent. Dan leaps again, pressing the advantage from above. Demon Shadow is stunned that all of his attacks have been neutralized so completely. Dan gathers crackling power around himself as he prepares a decisive strike. Lightning crashes down around the battlefield and engulfs Demon Shadow. Demon Shadow screams as the attack tears through him. His subordinates panic and call out to their captain. One of them recognizes the Sword King's presence as a warning not to interfere. They realize that stepping into this fight would only get them killed by the Sword King. So the squad holds back and watches helplessly from the carriage's side. The Sword King approves of at least one enemy having the sense to understand the situation. In the middle of the exchange, Dan even shatters Demon Shadow's sword. Lightning continues to dominate the battlefield as Dan keeps control of the fight. Dan remains composed, already reading the battle's end. Demon Shadow tries one last desperate aerial attack from above, but he realizes his techniques have been fully analyzed and his broken sword leaves him no path to victory, so he orders the Demon Shadow squad to retreat. The masked assassins obey at once and begin withdrawing. As he escapes, Demon Shadow vows that he and Dan Hyungwoo will meet again soon. Dan lets him go and stands quietly as the storm of energy fades. After the danger passes, the woman in the carriage finally steps out and looks at Dan directly. She is shaken by just how overwhelming his strength truly is. She immediately thinks someone like him would be a tremendous asset to the Golden Alliance. The Sword King breaks the tension by smacking Zhongqiu again and ordering the group to get moving. He insists the escort mission is finished and that they should hurry because others must be waiting for Dan as well. Far away, a lone figure watches from a high balcony. A young woman overlooks the city below, waiting for news. Two escort agency workers arrive and respectfully greet their agency head. She warmly returns the greeting and notes that everyone seems busy. Then she notices a large group arriving and asks who they are. A procession of mounted young martial artists enters the branch. She is told they are young masters of the Sichuan Tang clan who came to support the establishment of the Hunan branch. The staff explains that rumors of Lady Woman's beauty spread after the last escort mission, so many people now want to meet her. She can only awkwardly accept that explanation. Even so, her thoughts remain fixed on Hyunwoo. A staff member reassures her that there is nothing to worry about because Dan's group already destroyed the unorthodox alliance. He adds that enough time has passed that they should have reached Hunza Lake by now. The scene shifts to Hunza Lake. Their boat cuts across the water toward the next stage of the journey. Dan quietly thinks that he wants to see someone soon. The vast lake opens before them under the evening sky. Their boat glides deeper into the lake's rocky waterways. For the first time in his life, Dan stands on a boat and looks out over Hunza Lake. Having lost most memories from before age 10 and spent his life fighting monsters, he finds the endless water strangely wondrous. The contrast is sharp, because in Cheongua's cave he often had to drink monster blood instead of water. The veiled woman asks Dan whether he likes the water. Dan answers only with silence, still absorbed in the view. He finally explains that he is not ignoring her, he simply wants to keep watching the lake. She realizes he is genuinely captivated by the water and tries to keep his attention by explaining that Hunza Lake is fresh water despite looking like the sea. Zhongqiu immediately rejects that topic as useless for getting close to Dan. He tells her that if she wants Dan's attention, she needs to talk about food, because that is when his eyes change. She takes the advice and starts describing a nearby place famous for delicious Xylongbeo dumplings. That works instantly, and Dan abruptly asks where it is and when they can eat there. She is stunned by how completely his expression changes at the mention of food, while Zhongqiu smugly points out that he was right. The Sword King interrupts by smacking Zhongqiu again for losing his posture. When Zhongqiu complains, the old man simply does it again, leaving him convinced he is being singled out. Trying to recover, Zhongqiu remarks on how many boats are still on Hunza Lake even in the evening. The woman doubts there are really that many and looks more carefully. Zhongqiu points out a specific fleet in the distance. Dan and the woman both turn to look. The sails reveal the name Yama. The sight immediately alarms them. The Sword King explains that these are ships from the Yama stronghold, the pirate power that dominates the waters from Hunza Lake towards Suzhou. The woman tries to reassure herself that such pirates would not dare touch them while the Sword King is present. Even so, unease spreads across her face. Their boat keeps moving as the enemy vessels close in. Soon they find themselves amid a growing ring of pirate ships. Dan calmly states the obvious. They are surrounded. Elsewhere among the encircling forces, a subordinate reports that the targets are fully boxed in and confirms that 3 items were safely delivered to the Yama stronghold as ordered. The subordinate adds that with their support, the pirates have effectively seized control of the Hungza Lake region and will fight desperately to keep it. A hidden faction decides to use the pirate assault as cover to strike both the Sword King and Dan Hyunwoo at once. On the lake, the Yama stronghold grumbles that its supposed allies are making them fight from the front while acting superior from safety. Their chief, Yun Jiaksum, reveals his confidence comes from a legendary weapon called True Heavenly Lightning, which he believes can kill even the Sword King. As Dan's group blocks their way, the pirates are challenged to stop posturing and make their move. Yun Jiaksum gladly accepts that challenge and prepares to unleash his trump card. He ignites one of the True Heavenly Lightning bombs. The burning sphere is hurled toward Dan's ship. The people aboard notice an unfamiliar metal ball flying straight at them. Because none of them truly understand the weapon's power, the pirates assume everyone on the ship is about to die. Certain of victory, Yun Jiaksum roars for the Sword King's death. Yet the attack would only work if Dan Hyunwoo failed to intervene. Dan launches himself upward to intercept the bomb before it reaches the ship. He cuts directly into the falling weapon. The bomb detonates high above instead of on the deck. The blast sweeps over the lake in a storm of fire and force. From below, Dan's allies fear he has been swallowed by the explosion. Even the Sword King is stunned that the pirates possess the fabled True Heavenly Lightning at all. When the flames clear, Dan's ship is still intact. Yun Jiaksum erupts in fury at the unseen interference that ruined his sure kill. Jo Yunhwa realizes the one who saved them could only have been warrior Dan. The others are left speechless because Dan has vanished from sight after the blast. The conspirators convince themselves that even Dan could not have survived a direct encounter with True Heavenly Lightning. For a moment, the lake itself seems to confirm it, as Dan disappears in the aftermath of the first explosion. Elsewhere, Jo Seol-yin is called out because guests from the Murim Alliance have arrived. She sets aside her work and prepares to receive them. A subordinate apologizes for startling her, and she calmly asks what has happened. He reports that visitors from the Murim Alliance are waiting. The news surprises her. Even so, she immediately decides to go meet them. As she leaves, a sudden unease grips her and her thoughts turn to Hyunwoo's safety. Outside, the horses react restlessly, hinting that trouble is brewing. The visitors are revealed to be Namgung Jin and Peng Kiliang. They greet Lady Jo warmly, saying they are relieved she is safe. Jo Seol-yin politely asks why men so occupied with Murim Alliance affairs have come all this way. Namgung Jin is distracted by how much more beautiful she has become, but explains that they came out of concern and gratitude. Jo asks what exactly they mean by gratitude. They explain that the Jo clan had once saved their lives, so they volunteered for this mission to repay that debt, and the Murim Alliance has now decided to support the Hunan Escort Agency materially and morally. Jo outwardly receives the offer, but inwardly cannot ignore the irony of help arriving only now. She remembers how the Murim Alliance did nothing when her clan was destroyed. She also remembers that without Dan Hyunwoo's efforts, none of them would have survived long enough to rebuild anything. The alliances Dan forged with the Tang clan and the Wumun clan during the escort mission were just as vital. Jo realizes that without those efforts, even survival would have been doubtful, and she worries that this matter may wound Yunhwa even more deeply. Still, she thanks the visitors and tells them to rest after their journey. By this point, Jo Seol-yin has become a leader who puts the escort agency's interests ahead of her personal feelings. The 2 men accept her hospitality and place themselves in her care. At the same time, Jo senses that their visit is not driven by gratitude alone. Back on the lake, Dan's disappearance leaves the others shaken. The Sword King studies the aftermath and begins to grasp the terrifying power of True Heavenly Lightning. Then a report arrives that the Sword King himself is still alive, shattering the pirates' expectations. Yun Jiaksum regains his nerve by revealing he brought 3 bombs, not 1, and still believes the Sword King can be killed. He reasons that even the Sword King cannot survive another detonation at point-blank range. Meanwhile, hidden Dragon Corps members move through the water unnoticed beneath the chaos. Confident again, Yun Jiaksum arms a second bomb and declares that the Yama stronghold will finish the Sword King today. Dan's allies can only cry out in alarm as the next attack begins. The Sword King remains composed and tells them not to panic. He states that now that the lightning has returned, he will answer it. A blue-white pillar of sword energy erupts upward from his ship. The Sword King's counterattack tears through the sky like a vertical blade. That strike splits the second True Heavenly Lightning bomb open before it can be used properly. The bomb explodes among the pirates instead. Their own men are caught in the blast and scream for help as their ships burn. Only Dan's ship remains standing amid the wreckage and flames. Jo Yunhwa cannot understand why every Yama ship has sunk while theirs alone survived. The Sword King answers that her future grandson-in-law handled the danger before it reached them, openly crediting Dan. Dan, now visible again, warns that something dangerous is still moving beneath the water and urges everyone to leave at once. His warning makes the others realize the lake itself is no longer safe. They immediately order the ship to depart at full speed. Zhongqiu's fears prove justified, because the second explosion knocks the submerged Dragon Corps unconscious. The burning lake is left littered with drifting wreckage. The third and final True Heavenly Lightning sinks into the water instead of reaching its intended target. Something strikes it from below. The third bomb detonates underwater with enormous force. The blast launches Dan's ship into the air, stunning everyone aboard. Even while airborne, Dan and the Sword King stay balanced and ready. The violent shockwave ends up hurling their ship out of Hunza Lake faster than any planned escape could have. Watching them flee, one pirate asks whether they should pursue and block the escape route. Demon Shadow refuses, admitting that even with 3 bombs and the Yama pirates, they still could not stop these people, so for now they should only tail them quietly. As he watches Dan, Demon Shadow realizes only a handful of leaders in his association could have pulled off what Dan just did. He is forced to wonder what kind of monster Dan Hyungwoo really is. By daylight, Dan's group has safely reached shore. After changing from ship to carriage and traveling overland for half a day, they continue toward their destination. At last, they arrive. Their destination is the Golden Alliance headquarters. The imposing Golden Alliance compound receives them in full formality. Servants welcome the guests and say the young Alliance leader is already waiting. Yu Baeksang, the young leader of the Golden Alliance, comes out personally and warmly greets Yunhwa. Yunhwa recognizes him at once. Baeksang embraces her with obvious relief and affection. The Sword King immediately tries to turn the reunion into a marriage opportunity by boasting that this is exactly why he introduced his granddaughter. Baeksang thanks Dan's side for bringing Yunhwa back safely. He then invites everyone to sit and enjoy the lavish meal prepared for them. The table is loaded with extravagant dishes. Dan is deeply impressed by the feast and privately feels once again that becoming a porter for the Hunan escort agency was a fortunate choice. During the meal, Baeksang says he heard the Sword King was injured while protecting Yunhwa and regrets that all he can really offer in return is money, while the Sword King graciously accepts the sincerity behind it. The Sword King notes that someone else worked even harder than he did, though that person is currently too busy eating to care about the praise. Jongchil silently confirms that keeping his seat far from Dan was the right decision this time. Baeksang brings the conversation back to Dan, mentioning rumors that warrior Dan possesses extraordinary abilities. Dan misunderstands the remark as praise for the food and earnestly agrees that the meal is extraordinary. Baeksang can only laugh awkwardly at how unusual Dan is. He then raises a new matter, asking whether they heard the rumor about Cheonjija's secret cave on the way here. Dan responds with complete indifference to Cheonjija himself, and only wants to know what treasure is inside. In truth, Dan has long since stopped caring about Cheonjija's personal story, partly because Cheonjija is dead and partly because Dan now has people of his own to protect. Baeksang explains that despite that, Cheonjija's name still shakes the martial world because the cave is rumored to contain priceless weapons, manuals, hidden weapons, and fire bombs. The cave is said to lie in Mount Tianzhong in Hunan, and martial artists are already flocking there. The Sword King asks what the Golden Alliance intends to do about it. Baeksang answers that they must take part, especially since the Murim Alliance has already moved its warriors to the Hunan escort agency. That detail immediately catches Dan's attention. Jongchil blurts out his shock that the Murim Alliance has gone to their escort agency. Baeksang explains that the Murim Alliance first tried to monopolize the matter in secret, but before they could act, rumors about the cave spread throughout the martial world. The Sword King suspects the leak was deliberate. Demon Shadow separately reaches the same conclusion, linking the forest strangers, the pirates with true heavenly lightning, and the secret cave rumor into one connected scheme. Yun Jiaksum also senses that all these incidents are tied together somehow. Baeksang adds that because of this, the Murim Alliance is now being heavily criticized, and some of that anger is spilling onto the Hunan escort agency as well. The moment Dan hears that his agency may be caught in the fallout, he decides to leave immediately. The Sword King urges him to rest at least a day, arguing that one more night will not change much. Baeksang supports that advice and says the Murim Alliance warriors are staying at the agency anyway, so nothing serious should happen. Dan refuses to wait, and says he is going ahead on his own. He vanishes from the hall in a burst of speed before anyone can stop him. Baeksang is left startled by how abruptly he departed, while Yunhwa can only watch him go. The Sword King realizes Dan would not have rushed off like that without reason. As Dan races back, the Sword King reflects that the Hunan escort agency has clearly become precious to him. Dan's expression hardens as his unease grows. At the Hunan escort agency, with flames already rising, Zhou Seolyan orders the gates opened at once. The sealed entrance shakes under the pressure of the emergency outside. Zhou stands firm in the burning compound and commands the gates to be opened, while the narration confirms that Dan's fears were right and the Hunan escort agency is in serious danger.